In the shadowed halls of Greystone Manor, a sapphire-gowned heiress vanishes into the night, leaving only a spilled champagne glass and a torn lace glove. Was it love, greed, or a deadly secret that stole Clara Winthrop from her own gala? As whispers of betrayal and a hidden treasure echo through the maze, Hercule Poirot's little gray cells ignite. Who among the glittering guests hides a killer's heart? And what lies at the center of this tangled web? Unravel the mystery. Be lost in its shadows. Chapter 1. The vanishing heiress. Rain fell in a fine, relentless mist, cloaking the rolling hills of Dorset in a silver shroud as Hercule Poirot's hired car wound its way toward Greystone Manor. The little Belgian detective, impeccably dressed, despite the damp, adjusted his perfectly waxed mustache and peered through the window at the looming silhouette of the estate. The manor's Gothic spires pierced the fog like the claws of some great beast, and Poirot, ever attuned to atmosphere, felt a prickle of anticipation. Mon Dieu, he murmured to himself. A house such as this holds secrets as tightly as a miser holds gold. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend and occasional chronicler, shifted uncomfortably in the seat beside him. I say, Poirot, this place gives me the creeps. Why on earth did you agree to come all this way on such a dreary night? Poirot's eyes twinkled with that familiar gleam of intellectual delight. Because, mon ami, when a young heiress vanishes from her own gala, leaving behind a glass of champagne and a torn glove, it is not a matter for the local constabulary. It is a matter for Hercule Poirot. The summons had come that morning, delivered by a breathless messenger to London flat. Lady Margaret Winthrop, matriarch of Greystone Manor, had penned a desperate note. Her granddaughter, Clara Winthrop, had disappeared during a grand ball held the previous evening. The police, baffled by the lack of ransom demands or obvious suspects, had made little progress. Lady Margaret, an old acquaintance from Poirot's pre-war days in Brussels, had begged for his expertise. Clara is the light of our family, she wrote, and I fear some dark design has taken her from us. The car lurched to a stop before the manor's iron gates, which creaked open as if reluctant to admit visitors. A butler, gaunt and pale as a spectre, greeted them with a curt nod. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, he intoned, his voice as hollow as the wind. Lady Margaret awaits you in the drawing room. As they crossed the threshold, the grandeur of Greystone Manor unfolded. The entrance hall was a cathedral of marble and gilt, its chandelier casting fractured light across portraits of stern-faced Winthrops. Yet the air was heavy, not with the warmth of hospitality, but with the weight of unspoken fears. Servants moved like shadows, their whispers trailing off as Poirot's sharp gaze swept over them. Lady Margaret, a formidable woman in her 70s, rose from a velvet armchair in the drawing room. Her silver hair was pinned tightly, and her eyes, though red-rimmed, burned with resolve. Monsieur Poirot, she said, extending a trembling hand, thank you for coming. I am at my wit's end. Poirot bowed, his manner as precise as a metronome. Madame, it is my privilege to assist. Pray, tell me every detail, however small. The little gray cells, they thrive on such things. Hastings, ever practical, produced a notebook. Right, let's get the facts straight. When exactly did Clara disappear? Lady Margaret gestured to a pair of wingback chairs, and they sat. The fire crackled, casting long shadows that danced across the room's tapestries. It was last night, during the gala, she began. We were celebrating Clara's 25th birthday. The house was filled with guest friends, neighbors, and some less savory characters, I'm afraid. Clara was radiant, wearing a gown of sapphire silk and her mother's diamond necklace. She was laughing, dancing, the center of attention. Then, sometime after 10 o'clock, she was simply gone. Poirot leaned forward, his fingers steepled, and no one saw her leave. No one heard a cry, a struggle. Lady Margaret shook her head. Nothing. We searched the house, the grounds, even the village. The police found a glass of champagne, spilled near the entrance to the garden maze, and a torn lace-gloved Clariscot on a rose bush, but no trace of her. Hastings frowned. Sounds like she might have been lured outside. Any enemies? Jealous rivals? Lady Margaret hesitated, her lips tightening. Clara was a spirited girl. She had admirers, of course, but also those who envied her. And then there's Victor Duval. Poirot's eyebrows arched. Duval, a name most intriguing. Who is this gentleman? Lady Margaret's voice dropped to a near whisper. Her fiancé, a Frenchman, an art dealer with a questionable reputation. They met in Paris last spring, and Clara fell head over heels. My son, Reginald, Clara's uncle, disapproved vehemently. He believed Victor was after her fortune. They argued fiercely about it, and Clara, she kept secrets from us after that. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Secrets, you say? Bon, this is most useful. And where is Monsieur Duval now? He's here, Lady Margaret said, her tone laced with distaste. He arrived for the gala and has refused to leave until Clara is found. He's in the guest wing, under the watchful eye of our butler, Mr. Grayson. Hastings scribbled furiously. Sounds like a prime suspect to me, Poirot. Patience, Hastings, Poirot said, tapping his temple. The heart of the matter lies not in assumptions, but in facts. I must see this spilled champagne, this glove, and I must meet the guests who attended the gala. Lady Margaret nodded. Of course, many of the guests stayed overnight due to the storm. They're anxious, whispering among themselves. I'll have Grayson assemble them in the ballroom. As they followed Lady Margaret through the manor's labyrinthine corridors, Poirot's mind buzzed. The spilled champagne suggested haste or surprise. The torn glove, a struggle or a deliberate clue. And this Victor Duval, his presence, was a thread begging to be pulled. The ballroom, when they reached it, was a vision of faded opulence. Crystal chandeliers, dim velvet drapes, heavy with dust, and a parquet floor scuffed by countless dances. The guests, a motley assembly of Dorsets, elite, and a few outsiders, stood in clusters, their faces a tapestry of unease. Poirot's entrance drew every eye. He stood at the center of the room, his small stature commanding as he surveyed the crowd. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice clear and deliberate. I am Hercule Poirot, and I am here to find Mademoiselle Clara Winthrop. Each of you holds a piece of the puzzle, whether you know it or not. I ask for your cooperation and your honesty. A murmur rippled through the group. A young woman in a green dress, her auburn hair piled high, stepped forward. I'm Emily Hargrove, Clara's friend since childhood. She was happy last night, Monsieur Poirot. I saw her dancing with Victor near the terrace doors, but she seemed distracted, as if something was troubling her. Poirot's gaze lingered on Emily. Distracted, you say? Did she speak of this trouble? Emily hesitated, glancing at the others. Not exactly. She mentioned a letter she'd received, something about her uncle's business dealings. She brushed it off, but I could tell it bothered her. A portly man, with a walrus mustache, introduced as Colonel Bertram, scoffed. Nonsense. Clara was a flighty girl, always dreaming up dramas. Probably ran off with that French fellow for a lark. Poirot's smile was polite, but sharp. Colonel, the flighty do not leave behind torn gloves. Tell me, where were you when Mademoiselle Clara vanished? The colonel bristled. I was playing cards in the library with Lord Ashford and Mrs. Langley. Never left the room. Others chimed in, offering alibis. Lady Beatrice, a widow with a penchant for pearls, claimed to have been in the conservatory admiring orchids. Dr. Mortimer, the family physician, said he was tending to a guest with a headache. The butler, Grayson, insisted he was overseeing the staff. Each account was plausible, yet Poirot's instincts whispered of half-truths. Then Victor Duval entered, and the room fell silent. He was tall, with dark hair and eyes that gleamed like polished jet. His suit, though elegant, bore the faintest signs of wear. A detail Poirot noted with interest. Monsieur Poirot, Victor said, his accent smooth as cognac. I loved Clara. I would never harm her. If she is gone, it is because someone in this house wished her ill. Poirot studied him, noting the faint tremor in his hands. Monsieur Duval, love is a powerful motive, for good or for ill. Where were you when Mademoiselle Clara was last seen? Victor's jaw tightened. I was on the terrace, smoking. Clara and I had a disagreement. She wanted to speak to her uncle alone. I left her near the maze and returned to the ballroom. That was the last I saw of her." Hastings leaned close to Poirot. "He's hiding something, I'd wager." "Perhaps," Poirot whispered. "But the truth, it hides in plain sight. We must see this maze." The garden maze lay beyond the terrace, its yew hedges towering and dense, their edges blurred by the mist. The spilled champagne glass lay on its side near a stone bench, its contents soaked into the earth. Nearby, caught on a thorny rosebush, was the lace glove, its delicate fabric ripped as if snagged in haste. Poirot knelt, examining the ground. "Regard us, Hastings. The grass is crushed here, but not there." Someone stood, waited, perhaps watched, and these thorns they have caught, more than lace. He plucked a tiny thread of sapphire silk from the bush, matching the description of Clara's gown. "She was here," Poirot said, his voice low. "But did she flee, or was she taken?" The maze's entrance yawned before them, its paths twisting into darkness. Hastings shivered. "You're not suggesting we go in there now, are you? It's pitch black." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Not tonight, mon ami. The maze will keep its secrets until dawn. But the little gray cells, they are already at work. Clara is not for rye, feel it." They returned to the manor, where Lady Margaret awaited with a tray of tea. "Have you found anything?" she asked, her voice trembling. Poirot sipped his tea, his eyes distant. "Madame, your granddaughter has left us a trail, however faint. The champagne, the glove, the silk, they are signposts. Tomorrow, I shall follow them. For now, I ask that no one leaves the manor. The truth, it is here, among us." As the guests dispersed, their whispers filled the air like the rustle of leaves. Poirot retired to his room, but sleep eluded him. He sat at a small desk, sketching the layout of the maze from memory, his mind turning over the evening's revelations. Clara's distraction, Victor's evasiveness. The letter about her uncle's dealings each was a thread in a tapestry of deceit. And somewhere, in the heart of that maze, lay the key to her disappearance. The chapter closed with Poirot gazing out at the rain-swept gardens, his voice a soft murmur. "The little gray cells," they whispered. "Clara is not far." Chapter 2. Shadows. In the maze the morning after the gala at Greystone Manor was cloaked in a damp mist, the kind that clung to one's clothes and whispered of secrets. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the garden maze, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the dew-soaked grass. The maze, a sprawling labyrinth of yew hedges, loomed before him, its dark green walls swallowing the light. To the untrained eye, it was merely an ornamental feature of the estate, a relic of aristocratic whimsy. To Poirot, it was a puzzle, a silent witness to the vanishing of Clara Winthrop, the young heiress whose absence had summoned him to this grand troubled house. He adjusted his hat, the brim shielding his eyes from the drizzle, and surveyed the scene. The gala had been a glittering affair, with chandeliers casting golden light over a crowd of titled guests, nouveau rich interlopers, and a few enigmatic figures who seemed to belong nowhere. Clara, radiant in a silver gown, had been the centerpiece. She wasn't. Her disappearance, sometime between the waltz and the midnight toast, had left the guests murmuring and the household in disarray. Poirot's arrival, at the urgent request of Clara's mother, Lady Winthrop, was met with relief by some and suspicion by others. He cared little for their opinions. His little gray cells were already at work. The spilled champagne glass and torn lace glove, found near the maze's entrance during his initial inspection last night, were his first clues. The glass, still faintly scented with the crisp bite of Krug, had been abandoned mid-sip, its contents pooling on the gravel path. The glove, delicate and edged with Brussels lace, bore a small tear, as if caught on something sharp. Poirot had pocketed it, noting the faint trace of jasmine perfume Clara's scent, according to her maid. These were not mere accidents of a chaotic evening. They were threads in a tapestry he would unravel. "Mon ami," Poirot said, turning to Captain Hastings, who stood shivering in his overcoat. "The maze, it calls to us. It is not merely a garden feature, Nan. but a stage where drama has unfolded. We must enter its heart. Hastings, ever loyal, but perpetually baffled by Poirot's theatrics, nodded. Righto, Poirot. But it's a beastly thing. This maze, miles of hedges, and in this weather. Couldn't Clara have just wandered off and got lost? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of mild exasperation. Hastings, you think always with the feet, not the mind. Clara Winthrop did not wander. She was drawn harrower, taken. The spilled glass, the torn glove, these are not the signs of a careless stroll. Come, we explore. They stepped into the maze, the gravel crunching underfoot. The hedges, trimmed to an imposing 8 feet, closed around them, muffling the sounds of the manor. The air grew cooler, heavy with the scent of damp earth and evergreen. Poirot moved with purpose, his cane tapping rhythmically as he scanned the ground. Hastings trailed behind, muttering about the English weather and the folly of ornamental gardens. The maze was a marvel of design, its paths twisting in a pattern that seemed to defy logic. Poirot, however, saw order where others saw chaos. The maze, it is like the mind, he remarked, pausing at a fork in the path. It hides its secrets in symmetry. We must think as its creator thought. He crouched, his keen eyes catching a disturbance in the gravel set of footprints, faint but distinct, leading to the left. They were small, likely a woman's, and the heel marks suggested haste. Nearby, a larger set of prints, heavier and less defined, overlapped them. Poirot traced the outlines with his cane. Voila, Hastings. 2 people, one following the other. The smaller prints, they are Clara's, I am certain. The larger, perhaps her pursuer, or her rescuer, Hastings ventured, ever optimistic. Poirot's eyes gleamed. We shall see, mon ami. But first, we follow. The trail led deeper into the maze, the paths narrowing as they wound toward its center. The mist thickened, curling around the hedges like ghostly fingers. Poirot's pace quickened, his senses attuned to every detail. A snapped twig, a smear of mud on a leaf, a faint scratch on a yew branch where something or someone had brushed past. At a sharp turn, he stopped abruptly, pointing to a small object glinting in the gravel. A locket, he said, kneeling to retrieve it. The silver heart, no larger than a shilling, was engraved with the words, "To see, forever bound." The clasp was broken, as if torn from a chain. Poirot opened it, revealing a miniature portrait of a young man with dark eyes and a guarded smile. Interesting. This is not the work of a careless hand. Clara carried this close to her heart, and now it lies here. Discarded door dropped in flight. Hastings peered over his shoulder. That's Victor Duval, isn't it? Clara's mysterious fiancé, bit of a shady character, if you ask me. Always skulking about, talking about art and whatnot. Shady, perhaps, Poirot said, slipping the locket into his pocket. But we do not judge by impressions alone. Victor Duval is a man of secrets, yes, but secrets are not always sins. We must learn what binds him to Clara and what broke this locket. As they pressed on, the maze seemed to tighten its grip, the paths growing narrower, the hedges denser. The silence was broken by a sudden rustle, sharp and close. Hastings froze, his hand instinctively reaching for a revolver he wasn't carrying. Poirot, unruffled, tilted his head, listening. The sound came again, a low, deliberate crunch of gravel from the next path over. Someone is here, Poirot whispered, his voice barely audible. Stay close, Hastings, and make no sound. They crept forward, Poirot's cane held like a conductor's baton, guiding their steps. At the next junction, he peered around the hedge, his eyes narrowing. A figure stood in the mist, half hidden by the foliage. A man, tall and wiry, with a cap pulled low over his eyes. He was stooping, examining the ground, his movements furtive. Poirot gestured for Hastings to remain still, then stepped into view. "Bonjour, monsieur," Poirot said, his voice calm but carrying an edge. "You find the maze an interesting place for a morning stroll, Nan." The man straightened, startled, and Poirot recognized him. Amos, the groundskeeper, a grizzled figure with a face weathered by years outdoors. His hands were stained with soil, and a small trowel dangled from his belt. Mr. Poirot, he stammered. I was just checking the hedges. They need trimming. See, Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. Trimming, at this hour, in this mist. Your dedication is admirable, monsieur. But perhaps you seek something else. A trace of Mademoiselle Clara. Perhaps Amos's eyes darted to the side, betraying unease. I don't know nothing about that, sir. I told the police when I heard a scream last night during the gala. Came from the maze, I reckon, but I didn't see her. A scream, Poirot repeated, stepping closer. And yet you did not investigate. A curious choice for a man so devoted to his duties. Amos shifted, his fingers tightening around the trowel. It was late, sir. I thought it was just the guests, maybe a bit of fun gone wrong. I didn't want to intrude. Poirot's gaze held him, unblinking. Bean. But tell me, monsieur, these footprints, do you recognize them? Or perhaps you made them yourself in your trimming? Amos glanced at the ground, his face palling. I don't know nothing about footprints. I just keep the grounds. That's all, Notre-Dame, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. But the grounds, they speak, monsieur. And Hercule Poirot, he listens. As Amos muttered an excuse and hurried away, Poirot knelt again, studying the footprints. The larger set, he now saw, bore the distinct tread of work. Boots Samasa's boots, perhaps, but the smaller prints, delicate and hurried, told a different story. They veered toward a dead end in the maze, where the gravel gave way to soft earth. There, embedded in the mud, was a single pearl earring, its luster dulled by dirt. Clarence Hastings said, recognizing it from the gala. She wore a pair like that last night. Precisely, Poirot said, holding the earring to the light. She was here, in haste, in fear. But where did she go? The maze, it does not permit escape so easily. He traced the path to the dead end, where the hedge was impenetrably thick. Yet, as he ran his fingers along the yew, he felt a subtle give, a hidden panel, cunningly concealed. With a gentle push, it swung inward, revealing a narrow passage leading to the maze's heart. Poirot's eyes sparkled. Ah, the maze! It keeps its secrets, well, but not from Poirot. The passage was cramped, barely wide enough for Poirot's slight frame. Hastings, broader and less graceful, grumbled as he squeezed through. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, until they emerged into a circular clearing at the maze's center. A stone bench sat beneath a gnarled oak, its branches heavy with mist. On the bench lay a single item, a silk scarf, embroidered with initials, stained with what looked like blood. Hastings gasped. Good Lord, Poirot, is that blood? Yes, Poirot said, examining the scarf without touching it. But whose, and why left here, so deliberately? This is no accident, Hastings. It is a message. He circled the clearing, his mind racing. The scarf, the earring, the locket, the footprints, all pieces of a puzzle. But the picture was incomplete. Clara had fled into the maze, pursued by someone, Victor Duval, perhaps, or the groundskeeper, or another unknown player. The scream Amos heard suggested violence, yet the hidden passage implied planning. Was Clara a victim, or was she orchestrating something more complex? Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound, a low, rhythmic tapping, like a signal. It came from beyond the clearing, deeper in the maze. He motioned for Hastings to follow, moving silently toward the source. The tapping grew louder, then stopped abruptly. As they rounded a corner, they found a small alcove hidden by overhanging branches. There, scratched into the bark of a yew, was a crude symbol, a circle with a cross inside, like a sundial's shadow. Quest CEQ Cest, Poirot murmured, tracing the symbol with his finger. A mark, a sign. Clara, she leaves us a trail, or someone wishes us to believe she does. Hastings frowned. It could just be vandalism, Poirot. Kids from the village, maybe. Nan, Poirot said, shaking his head. This is no child's work. It is deliberate, precise. We must learn its meaning. As they retraced their steps, the mist began to lift, revealing the manor in the distance, its windows glinting like watchful eyes. Poirot paused at the maze's entrance, pulling a small notebook from his pocket. With meticulous care, he began sketching a map of the maze, marking the footprints, the hidden passage, the clearing, and the symbol. Each line was drawn with the precision of an architect, his hands steady despite the chill. "Hastings," he said, not looking up, "the maze, it is a microcosm of this case. Paths that twist, secrets that hide, truths that elude. But Hercule Poirot, he does not lose his way." Hastings, rubbing his hands for warmth, managed a smile. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? All this cloak and dagger stuff." Poirot, mustache curved upward. "Mon ami, the mind, it thrives on challenge, and this maze, it challenges me greatly. But I shall conquer it, as I shall conquer this mystery." As they returned to the manor, Poirot's thoughts churned. The locket pointed to Victor Duval, whose absence during the scream was troubling. Amos's nervousness suggested guilt, or at least knowledge. The scarf, stained with blood, raised the stakes. Clara was either in grave danger or playing a dangerous game, and the symbol, that enigmatic circle and cross, hinted at a deeper layer, perhaps tied to the treasure whispered about among the staff. In the manor's drawing room, Poirot faced the assembled household. Lady Winthrop, pale and anxious. Victor Duval, his charm tinged with defiance. The maid, Jenny, whose eyes flickered with unspoken fears. And a handful of guests, their polished manners masking unease. He held up the locket, watching their faces. "This," he said, "was found in the maze. It belongs to Mademoiselle Clara, Nan. And yet it is broken, abandoned. Who among you can explain this?" Victor's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Lady Winthrop clutched her handkerchief, her voice trembling. "Clara loved that locket. She never took it off." "Precisement," Poirot said. "And yet it lies in the maze, where she was last seen. Monsieur Duval, you are her fiancé, are you not? Where were you when she vanished?" Victor's eyes met Poirot's, cool and steady. "I was in the ballroom, dancing with Lady Beatrice. Ask her if you don't believe me." Lady Beatrice, a statuesque woman with a penchant for emeralds, nodded. "It's true. Victor was with me until the toast." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Merci, madame. But the maze, it tells a different story. And Hercule Poirot, he listens to the maze." As the household dispersed, Poirot lingered, his mind returning to the symbol in the alcove. It was no random mark. It was a clue, a piece of Clara's story. He would return to the maze at dusk, when shadows revealed what daylight hid. For now, he had questions for Victor Duvaland, a growing suspicion that the answer to Clara's disappearance lay not in her absence, but in what she had left behind. The day wore on, with Poirot conducting discreet interviews. Jenny, the maid, admitted to seeing Clara slip into the maze before the scream, her face pale with fear. "She was clutching her locket, sir," Jenny whispered, "like it was her lifeline." "And did you see anyone follow her?" Poirot asked. Jenny hesitated, then shook her head. "No, sir. But I heard someone else in the garden later. Heavy steps, like a man's." Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. He sought out Amos again, finding him raking leaves near the stables. The groundskeeper's unease had deepened, his hands trembling as he worked. "Monsieur Amos," Poirot said, "you heard a scream, yet you did nothing. But you know more, I think. The footprints in the maze, were they yours?" Amos's eyes widened. "I told you, sir, I was nowhere near the maze last night. I swear it." "Bean," Poirot said, his tone soft but piercing. "But the maze, it does not lie. And neither should you." As Amos stammered a denial, Poirot walked away, his mind racing. The groundskeeper was hiding something. But was it guilt or fear? The locket, the scarf, the earring, the symbol all pointed to a chase, a struggle, a plan. Clara was either a victim or a mastermind, and Poirot leaned toward the latter. Her engagement to Victor, her uncle's disapproval, the whispers of a treasure. These were not random threads, but a carefully woven web. At dusk, Poirot returned to the maze alone, the manor's lights fading behind him. The air was crisp, the shadows long. He followed the hidden passage to the clearing, where the scarf still lay, its blood-stained now, a dark accusation. Kneeling, he examined the ground, finding fresh scratches in the earthmarks of a struggle, or perhaps a signal. The symbol on the yew tree caught his eye again, its lines sharper in the fading light. "Clara, ma chère," he murmured, "you leave breadcrumbs, but for whom?" A sudden noise of twigs snapping made him turn. The maze was silent, but Poirot felt watched. He gripped his cane, ready to confront whoever lurked in the shadows. But no one appeared. Instead, a faint breeze carried a new clue, the scent of jasmine, Clara's perfume, lingering in the air. Poirot smiled. "You are close, Mademoiselle Clara, and Hercule Poirot, he is closer still." He left the maze, his notebook now filled with a detailed map, the symbol meticulously copied. The case was deepening, its layers peeling back like the petals of a flower. Clara was alive, he was certain, but her game was dangerous, and the players were closing in. Tomorrow, he would confront Victor Duval again, probe Lady Beatrice's alibi, and unravel the meaning of the circle and cross. For now, the maze held its secrets, but not for long. Chapter 3. The Locked Study, the morning after Poirot's exploration of the garden maze. Greystone Manor awoke under a pall of unease. The disappearance of Clara Winthrop, the young heiress, had already set tongues wagging among the galla's lingering guests, but a new calamity now gripped the household. Sir Reginald Winthrop, Clara's uncle and the manor's stern patriarch, had been found dead in his locked study, a single bullet wound to his temple. The police, summoned at dawn, bustled about with their notebooks, while the servants hovered in corners, exchanging fearful whispers. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit despite the hour, stood at the heart of the chaos, his mustache twitching as his sharp eyes surveyed the scene. The study was a fortress of oak and leather, its heavy door bolted from within. A single window, high and narrow, was latched shut, its glass unmarred. The air carried the faint temps of gunpowder, mingling with the musty scent of old books. Sir Reginald's body slumped over his mahogany desk, his silver hair matted with blood. A revolver lay near his right hand, its barrel still warm. To the untrained eye, it was a clear case of suicide, and Inspector Grayson, the local constabulary's due representative, seemed eager to close the matter. "Tragic, but straightforward," Grayson declared, scribbling in his notebook. Sir Reginald was understrained his niece's disappearance. Financial troubles, perhaps. He took the easy way out. Poirot, standing by the desk, tilted his head, his gloved fingers hovering over the revolver without touching it. "Straightforward, you say, Inspector?" The mind of Hercule Poirot, it does not leap so quickly to conclusions. Observe, if you please, the absence of gunpowder burns on the hand or temple. A man who shoots himself at such close range, he leaves a mark, n'est-ce pas? Grayson's brow furrowed, but he waved a hand dismissively. "Details, Mr. Poirot." The door was locked, the window secure. No one could have entered or left. Poirot's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "And yet, mon ami, the impossible has occurred. A man is dead, and the truth, it hides in the shadows of this room." Captain Hastings, Poirot's loyal companion, hovered near the fireplace, his face pale. "Good Lord, Poirot, it's eerie. Clara missing, and now this. Do you think the two are connected?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Connected. Maze, we, Hastings. The little gray cells, they hum with certainty. Clara's vanishing. It is the thread that pulls us to this tragedy. But we must proceed with method, with order." He began his inspection, moving with the precision of a watchmaker. The desk was cluttered with papers, estate ledgers, a few terse letters from creditors, and a half-written note in Sir Reginald's spidery hand. Poirot lifted the note delicately, his eyes narrowing as he read the fragmented words. "My dearest Clara, I cannot allow—" The sentence broke off, as if the writer had been interrupted. Poirot slipped the note into an envelope, tucking it into his pocket. "Curious," he murmured. "A man begins a letter to his missing niece, only to end his life before finishing. Nan, this is not the act of despair." His gaze shifted to the floor. where a faint glint caught his eye. Bending with surprising agility, he retrieved a small brass key, its teeth worn but distinct. It lay beneath the desk, half hidden by the thick Persian rug. Poirot held it aloft, studying it as if it were a jewel. "What's that, Poirot?" Hastings asked, craning his neck. "A key, Hastings. A key to what, I wonder? Not the study door, for that lock is modern and sturdy, nor the window, which requires no key, perhaps. Something else." Inspector Grayson, overhearing, snorted. "A spare key, likely dropped years ago. You're making mountains of molehills, Mr. Poirot." Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. "The molehill, Inspector. It often conceals the treasure. Permit me to continue my observations." He circled the room, pausing at the bookshelf, where a row of leather-bound volumes stood slightly askew. One book, a treatise on Renaissance art, protruded an inch further than the others. Poirot pulled it gently, revealing a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside lay a velvet pouch, empty but bearing the faint outline of a heavy object, perhaps a statuette or relic. Poirot's fingers traced the pouch's stitching, his expression thoughtful. "Sir Reginald, he guarded something of value," Poirot said softly. "Something worth killing for, perhaps." The household was summoned to the drawing room, where Poirot began his inquiries. The guests, still reeling from Clara's disappearance, now faced the grim reality of Sir Reginald's death. Lady Beatrice Harcourt, a widow with a penchant for emeralds and sharp remarks, fanned herself vigorously, her eyes darting nervously. "A dreadful business," she said. "Poor Reginald, so burdened by that wayward niece of his. I heard them arguing days ago, something about her engagement to that foreigner, Duval." Poirot's head tilted. "An argument, madame. Pray, tell me more." Lady Beatrice hesitated, her fan pausing mid-flirt. "Oh, it was nothing specific. Just raised voices in the library. Reginald was protective of Clara's fortune. You know, Victor Duval, Clara's enigmatic fiancé, lounged in an armchair, his dark eyes smoldering with defiance. His tailored suit, though elegant, bore a faint stain on the cuff mud, perhaps from the garden maze. Poirot's gaze lingered on it. "Monsieur Duval," he said smoothly, "you were close to Sir Reginald. Nan, a man engaged to his niece. He seeks the approval of the family, does he not?" Duval's jaw tightened. "Sir Reginald disapproved of me, if that's what you mean. He thought me a fortune hunter. But I loved Clara, and she loved me. I had no reason to harm him." "And yet," Poirot countered, "you were seen near the study last night, by a maid. What business had you there, so late?" Duval's composure faltered, but only for a moment. "I was looking for Clara's diary. She'd mentioned it contained something important about her uncle's business dealings. I thought it might explain her disappearance." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A diary, monsieur. Most convenient. And did you find it?" "No," Duval said curtly. "The study was locked. The butler, Mr. Grayson, no relation to the inspector, stood rigidly by the door, his face a mask of professionalism." But Poirot noted the slight tremble in his hands, the way his eyes avoided meeting anyone's gaze. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, turning to him, "you were the last to see Sir Reginald alive, were you not? You brought him his evening brandy." "Oui." The butler nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir, at 9 o'clock, as usual. He seemed preoccupied, but in good health." "And the study door?" Poirot pressed. "It was locked when you left." "Yes, sir. Sir Reginald always locked it himself after I delivered his brandy." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Mercy, Monsieur Grayson. That will be all for now." As the household dispersed, Poirot drew Hastings aside, his voice low. "Hastings, my friend, this is no simple suicide. The key, the empty pouch, the unfinished letter, they tell a story, but not the one the police believe. Sir Reginald was murdered, and the murderer, they are still among us." Hastings gaped. "Murdered? But how, Poirot? The door was locked, the window barred. It's impossible." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Impossible. Nan, Hastings, Millie, improbable. The method, it is clever. But Hercule Poirot, He is more clever still. We must learn more of Sir Reginald's secrets and Clara's the diary, the artifact, the argument with Duval. They are pieces of the same puzzle. The day wore on, with Poirot moving through the manor like a bloodhound on a scent. He interviewed the maid, Elsie, who had seen Duval near the study. She was a nervous girl, twisting her apron as she spoke. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, sir," she stammered. But Mr. Duval, he was pacing outside the study door, muttering to himself something about proving it. I thought he meant proving his love for Miss Clara. But now, Poirot patted her hand reassuringly. "You have done well, mademoiselle. Tell me, this pacing, it was before or after the butler delivered the brandy?" "After, sir, around 9:30. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Most interesting. And the study door, it remained closed?" "Yes, sir. I didn't hear it open." Next, Poirot examined the revolver, with Inspector Grayson's reluctant permission. It was a Webley, well-maintained but old, its grip polished smooth from years of use. Poirot sniffed the barrel, noting the faint residue of a recent shot. But the absence of gunpowder burns on Sir Reginald's hand gnawed at him. He requested a paraffin test, which Grayson grudgingly agreed to, muttering about foreign fancies. While awaiting the results, Poirot returned to the study, this time alone. He stood by the desk, closing his eyes, letting the room speak to him. The ticking of the mantel clock, the creak of the floorboards, the faint draft from the window, they wove a tapestry of clues. He reopened the hidden compartment, examining the velvet pouch more closely. A single thread, crimson and fine, clung to its edge. Poirot plucked it carefully, holding it to the light. "Not from the rug," he murmured, "nor the curtains. Perhaps a garment." His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. It was Emily, Clara's childhood friend, her face pale but resolute. "Mr. Poirot, I must speak with you. It's about Clara and her uncle." Poirot gestured for her to enter, closing the door behind her. "Mademoiselle, you have information. Speak, I beg you." Emily clasped her hands, her voice trembling. "Clara told me, just before the gala, that she'd found something in her uncle's study. A letter, hidden in a book. It mentioned a treasure, something he'd smuggled during the war. She was frightened, said he'd never let her marry Victor if she exposed it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A letter, you say? And this treasure, what was it?" She didn't know exactly. Something small, valuable. She thought it was why her uncle was so against Victor, not just his background, but because Victor might uncover it. Poirot nodded slowly. "And this letter, mademoiselle, where is it now?" Emily shook her head. "Clara hid it again. She was afraid her uncle would find out she'd seen it. But after she vanished, I looked for it myself. I couldn't find it." Poirot's gaze softened. "You are brave, mademoiselle, to share this. Rest assured, Hercule Poirot will find the truth for Clara, and for Sir Reginald." As Emily left, Poirot's mind raced. The letter, the pouch, the key, they pointed to a secret Sir Reginald had died to protect, or to conceal. But how had the murderer entered and left the locked room? He paced the study, his cane tapping rhythmically, until his eyes fell on the fireplace. It was cold, its grate filled with ash. Kneeling, he sifted through the ashes, his gloves smudged but his focus unbroken. A charred fragment of paper emerged, bearing a single word: Duval. Poirot's lips tightened. So, Sir Reginald suspected Monsieur Duval. But of what? Smuggling, murder, or something more personal? The paraffin test results arrived that evening, confirming Poirot's suspicions. No gunpowder residue on Sir Reginald's hand. Inspector Grayson, red-faced, conceded that murder was possible, though he insisted the locked room made it improbable. Poirot merely smiled, promising to deliver the solution in due time. That night, Poirot sat in his guest room, sipping a tisane, his notebook open before him. He sketched a timeline: the brandy at 9, Duval's pacing at 9:30, the muffled shot reported by a footman around 10, the key, the pouch, the crimson thread, the charred paper. They danced in his mind, refusing to align. Yet Poirot felt the truth drawing closer, like a shadow emerging from fog. A soft creak outside. His door snapped him alert. Slipping his cane into his hand, he opened the door to find the corridor empty, save for a faint scent of lavender Lady Beatrice's perfume. Perhaps. He closed the door, his expression grim. The game, it deepens, he murmured, but Poirot, he does not falter. The next morning, Poirot requested a private meeting with Lady Beatrice. She arrived in the library, her emerald necklace glinting, her demeanor cool but guarded. Madame Poirot began. You spoke of an argument between Sir Reginald and Clara, but I sense you know more of his business, perhaps his treasures. Lady Beatrice's fan snapped shut. I know nothing of treasures, Mr. Poirot. Reginald was a private man. If he had secrets, he kept them well. And yet, Poirot said softly, your late husband, he dealt in artifacts, did he not? Artifacts that, during the war, found their way into private hands. Her eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. My husband's dealings were legitimate. You're grasping at straws, sir. Poirot inclined his head. Perhaps. But the straws, madam, they form a pattern. And the pattern, it leads to the truth. As she left, Poirot's gaze lingered on her crimson shawl, its hue matching the thread from the pouch. He made a note in his book, underlining Lady Beatrice. Twice that the day brought another discovery. The groundskeeper, tending the maze, found a cigarette case near its entrance, engraved with Victor Duval's initials. Poirot examined it, noting a faint scratch on its surface, as if it had been dropped or thrown. Inside was a single cigarette, its paper slightly damp. From the maze, Poirot mused, but when the night of the gala, or later, he returned to the study, determined to unravel the locked room mystery. The fireplace drew his attention again. Kneeling, he examined its flue, his flashlight piercing the darkness. A faint scrape mark marred the interior, as if something, a rope, perhaps had been pulled through. Poirot's heart quickened. A rope, he whispered. A rope to lower the murderer, or to remove the weapon. Ingenious, but not infallible. He summoned the butler, whose composure cracked under Poirot's relentless questioning. Grayson admitted to hearing a faint thud in the study after delivering the brandy, but assumed it was Sir Reginald moving furniture. A thud, Monsieur Poirot said sharply, and you did not investigate. I thought it nothing, sir, Grayson stammered. Sir Reginald disliked interruptions. Poirot dismissed him, his mind worried. A rope, a thud, a key, a thread the pieces were aligning, but the final picture eluded him. He resolved to search Clara's room, hoping her diary might hold the key to her uncle's death. The room was a shrine to Clara's youth. Lace curtains, a four-poster bed, a vanity strewn with perfumes. Poirot searched methodically, his fingers probing beneath the mattress, behind the mirror. In the wardrobe, tucked inside a hatbox, he found a small notebook, its pages filled with Clara's neat script, but the entries were coded, a jumble of letters and numbers. A challenge, Poirot said, his eyes alight. But Hercule Poirot, he loves a challenge. He pocketed the diary, vowing to decipher it. As he left the room, a shadow moved in the corridor Duval, slipping toward the library. Poirot followed silently, his cane muffled by the rug. Duval entered the library, closing the door. Poirot pressed his ear to the wood, catching fragments of a heated exchange. You promised me the statuette, Duval hissed. Reginald's, dead where? Is it a woman's voice? Lady Beatrice replied. It's gone, you fool. Clara hid it. If you'd kept her in line. The voices dropped, and Poirot withdrew, his mind racing. A statuette, hidden by Clara, coveted by Duval, and Lady Beatrice. Sir Reginald's death, a locked room, a smuggled treasurette, was a tapestry of greed and betrayal, with Clara at its heart. That evening, Poirot gathered his clues, the key, the thread, the diary, the cigarette case, the scrape in the flue. He sat by the fire, his tisane cooling, his notebook filled with diagrams. The murderer had entered the study, shot Sir Reginald, and escaped, leaving the room locked. The rope suggested a daring exit perhaps, through the flue, to the roof, then down the ivy-covered wall. But the key, found beneath the desk, hinted at another lock, another secret dot, as midnight told. Poirot closed his notebook, his eyes gleaming. "The truth, it is near," he said softly. "Tomorrow, Hercule Poirot will strike." The chapter closed with Greystone Manor silent, its secrets locked within its walls. Poirot, undaunted, prepared for the next move, his little gray cells, weaving the threads of mystery into a masterpiece of deduction. Chapter 4. The foreigner's secret. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Greystone Manor's morning room, casting long, wavering shadows across the polished oak floor. Hercule Poirot sat in a high-backed armchair, his small, neat hands folded over the silver head of his cane. His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, surveyed the room's occupants with a deceptive air of calm. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension, the kind that follows a death and a disappearance in close succession. Sir Reginald Winthrop's body had been removed from the locked study, but the weight of his absence lingered, as did the mystery of his niece Clara's vanishing. Across from Poirot stood Victor Duval, the enigmatic fiancé of the missing heiress. Duval was a man of striking presence, tall, with dark hair swept back from a high forehead, and eyes that held a glint of both charm and calculation. His tailored suit, though impeccable, bore the faintest crease at the elbow, as if he had spent the night in restless motion. He leaned casually against the mantelpiece, but Poirot noted the subtle tightening of his fingers around a cigarette case, a nervous tick betraying his composure. "Monsieur Duval," Poirot began, his voice smooth yet edged with precision. "You will permit me, I hope, to ask a few questions. The matter of Mademoiselle Clara's disappearance and, now the tragic death of her uncle demands clarity." N'est-ce pas? Duval's lips curved into a faint smile, but his eyes remained wary. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot, I have nothing to hide." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching slightly. "That is a bold claim, Monsieur. In my experience, those who proclaim their innocence so readily often have the most interesting secrets." A murmur rippled through the room. Lady Beatrice, seated near the window with a cup of tea trembling in her hands, glanced up sharply. The butler, hovering near the door, adjusted his cuffs with a touch too much care. Captain Hastings, Poirot's loyal friend, stood by the bookcase, his honest face creased with concern. The air was charged, as if each person awaited a spark, to ignite the truth or to bury it deeper. Poirot rose, his movements deliberate, and paced slowly before the fireplace. "Let us begin with the night of the gala, Monsieur Duval. You were seen arguing with Mademoiselle Clara near the garden maze. A heated exchange, I am told, witnessed by a maid. What was the nature of this discussion?" Duval exhaled a thin stream of smoke, his gaze steady. "A lover's quarrel, nothing more. Clara was upset about her uncle's disapproval of our engagement. He thought me unsuitable, a foreigner, with no title, no estate. She felt torn between family and love. I tried to reassure her, but she was emotional." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Emotionally, you say? And yet, monsieur, this emotional young woman vanished that very night, leaving behind a torn glove and a spilled glass of champagne. Curious, Nan. And now her uncle is dead, in a locked room, with a bullet in his head. You will agree, I think, that these events are not mere coincidence." Duval's jaw tightened, but his voice remained even. "I had no part in Clara's disappearance, or Sir Reginald's death. I loved Clara. I still do. If she's in danger, I want to find her as much as you do." Poirot paused, his fingers brushing the edge of a small table where a vase of lilies drooped, their petals curling inward as if guarding a secret. "Love, Monsieur Duval, is a powerful motive. It can inspire great devotion or great deception. Tell me, what is your profession?" "An art dealer, I believe." Duval nodded, his posture stiffening. "Yes, I specialize in rare European paintings, mostly from the Renaissance and Baroque periods. My work takes me across the continent: Paris, Florence, Vienna." "And yet," Poirot said, his voice softening to a dangerous purr, "you find yourself here, in a quiet English manner, wooing an heiress. A fortunate turn of events, Nan, or perhaps calculated." The room grew still. Lady Beatrice's teacup clinked against its saucer, and the butler's eyes darted to Duval. Hastings shifted uncomfortably, sensing the trap Poirot was weaving. Duval's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. I met Clara in Paris last spring, at an exhibition. We fell in love. My presence here is no scheme, Monsieur Poirot. I followed my heart. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The heart, it is a poetic thing. But the little gray cells, they demand evidence. Tell me, Monsieur Duval, have you ever dealt in, let us say, questionable art, paintings, perhaps, with origins that are not entirely legitimate? Duval's cigarette froze halfway to his lips. For a fraction of a second, his mask slipped, revealing a flicker of alarm. I run a respectable business, he said. His voice clipped. Every piece I sell is authenticated. Poirot smiled, a small, knowing smile. Bean. Then, you will not object if I examine a painting in this very manner of Venetian landscape, hanging in the drawing room. It caught my eye yesterday. The brushwork, it is intriguing. Duval's fingers tightened on the cigarette case, but he shrugged. Examine it if you wish. It's a minor work, hardly worth your time. Poirot inclined his head, as if conceding the point, but his mind was already racing. The painting had indeed caught his attention, not for its beauty, but for a subtle flaw in the signature, a flourish that seemed too modern for a supposed 17th century master. He suspected it was a forgery, and if Duval was involved, it could link him to a broader web of deceit, perhaps even to Clara's disappearance. Before Poirot could press further, the door swung open, and a young maid, her face pale, hurried in. Monsieur Poirot, sir, she stammered. I thought you should know. I saw something the night Sir Reginald died. I didn't want to speak before, but Poirot turned, his expression softening. Calm yourself, mademoiselle. What did you see? The maid, whose name was Elsie, twisted her apron in her hands. It was late, after the gala. I was tidying the hall, near the study, and I saw Monsieur Duval coming down the stairs. He looked agitated. He was carrying something under his coat, something small, like a book or a box. I didn't think much of it then, but now, with Sir Reginald dead, Duval's face darkened. That's absurd. I was in my room all night. After the gala, this girl is mistaken or lying. Elsie flinched but held her ground. I know what I saw, sir. I'm not lying. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. Mercy, Mademoiselle Elsie. Your courage is noted. You may go, but remain in the manor. I may need to speak with you again. As Elsie scurried out, Poirot turned to Duval, his eyes piercing. A witness, Monsieur Duval, and a most inconvenient one for you. Care to amend your story? Duval crushed his cigarette in an ashtray, his movements sharp. I told you, I was in my room. The maid is confused. It was dark, and she's young and presentable. She could have seen anyone. Poirot nodded, as if considering this, perhaps, but the little gray cells, they do not accept coincidence, so icily. A painting, that is not what it seems. A man seen near a crime scene, a missing heiress. These threads, they weave a pattern, and I, Hercule Poirot, will unravel it. The morning passed in a flurry of activity. Poirot, with Hastings at his side, made his way to the drawing room, where the Venetian landscape hung above a marble fireplace. The painting depicted a serene lagoon, with gondolas gliding under a golden sky. To the untrained eye, it was a charming, if unremarkable, work. But Poirot's eye was anything but untrained. Observe, Hastings, he said, pointing to the signature. In the corner, the name Bellini is rendered with a flourish, a curl that is characteristic of a later period, and the pigmency, how the blue of the sky has a certain vibrancy. Too vibrant, I think, for a canvas of such age. Hastings frowned, peering at the painting. You think it's a fake. I think, mon ami, that it is not what it claims to be. And if Monsieur Duval is connected to this forgery, it suggests a motive beyond love for Mademoiselle Clara. Art, you see, is not merely beauty, it is money, power, and sometimes crime. They were interrupted by Lady Beatrice, who entered the room with a rustle of silk. Her face, usually composed, bore a faint flush, and her eyes darted to the painting. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice strained, "I heard you were examining the artwork. May I ask why?" Poirot turned, his expression bland. "A mere fancy, Madame. The painting, it reminds me of a work I saw in Venice." "Tell me, do you know its history?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, her fingers brushing a pearl necklace at her throat. "It was a gift to Sir Reginald, I believe, from a business associate. I know little of art myself." Poirot's smile was polite, but his eyes were keen. "A gift, you say, most generous. And this associate, do you recall his name?" Her flush deepened. I'm afraid I don't. Sir Reginald handled such matters not to realm, Poirot said, bowing slightly. "Mercy, madame. You have been most helpful." As Lady Beatrice retreated, Hastings whispered, "She's hiding something." "Poirot, did you see how nervous she was?" Poirot nodded, his gaze returning to the painting. "Oui, mon ami. The lady is uneasy, and the painting, it is a lie. But what truth does it conceal? That is the question." The afternoon brought Poirot to the Manor's library, a vast room lined with leather-bound volumes and heavy oak furniture. He had requested access to Sir Reginald's papers, hoping to uncover a link between the forged painting and the smuggling ring Duval was rumored to be part of. The estate solicitor, a doorman named Mr. Grayson, had provided a box of documents, but his reluctance to linger suggested he, too, feared what might be found. Poirot sifted through the papers with methodical care, his gloved fingers turning pages with the precision of a surgeon. Most were mundane ledgers, correspondence, deeds, but one letter caught his eye. It was written in a hurried hand, unsigned, and dated only a week before the gala. "Reginald," it read, "the shipment must be secured before the girl suspects. Duval is unreliable. Dispose of the item at once, or we are all at risk." Poor mustache twitched. "The item," he murmured. "The painting, perhaps, or something more valuable." He tucked the letter into his pocket, his mind racing. The reference to the girl could only mean Clara, and the warning about Duval confirmed Poirot's suspicions. But what was the shipment, and why was it so dangerous? As evening fell, Poirot summoned Duval to the library for a second interview. The art dealer arrived with an air of defiance, his earlier charm replaced by a guarded edge. He seated himself across from Poirot, lighting another cigarette with a flick of his lighter. "You are persistent, Monsieur Poirot," Duval said, exhaling smoke. "What now? Another accusation?" Poirot leaned forward, his eyes locking with, "Duval's not an accusation, monsieur, but a challenge. I have seen the painting in the drawing room, and I know it is a forgery. A clever one, but a forgery nonetheless. And I believe you are its creator or its broker." Duval's face remained impassive, but his fingers stilled on the cigarette. "You're mistaken. I told you, I deal in authentic art." Poirot waved a hand, dismissing the denial. "Let us dispense with pretense, Monsieur Duval. I have also found a letter, one that speaks of a shipment and a girl who must not suspect. Clara, I presume, and you, monsieur, are named as unreliable. Care to explain?" For the first time, Duval's composure cracked. He leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "You're fishing, Poirot. You have no proof." Poirot smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "Proof, monsieur, is a matter of time. But consider this. A maid saw you near the study the night Sir Reginald died. A painting in this house is false, and you are an art dealer with a questionable past. And Clara, your beloved, is missing, perhaps because she learned too much. The net, it tightens." Duval stubbed out his cigarette, his movements jerky. "You're clever, I'll give you that. But you're wrong about me. I loved Clara. I wanted to protect her from her uncle's schemes, not harm her. He was the one mixed up in something dangerous, smuggling, I think. He tried to drag me into it, but I refused." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "Smuggling, you say? And what, pray, was being smuggled?" Duval hesitated, then leaned forward, his voice low. "I don't know the details. Reginald was secretive, but he mentioned a rare artifact, something from the war. He said it was worth a fortune, but it came with risks. Clara overheard him talking about it, and she started asking questions. That's why we argued. She wanted to confront him, and I begged her not to. Poirot's mind word, fitting this new piece into the puzzle. An artifact, smuggled during the war, could explain the forged painting a cover, perhaps to launder illicit gains. And Clara, curious and headstrong, had stumbled into danger. Most interesting, Monsieur Duval, Poirot said, rising. You have given me much to consider. But be warned, if you are lying, the little gray cells will know, and they are never mistaken. As Duval left, Poirot turned to Hastings, who had been listening in silence. What do you make of it, mon ami? Hastings rubbed his chin. He's slippery. Poirot, I don't trust him, but he seemed genuine about Clara. Do you think he's telling the truth about the smuggling? Poirot tapped his cane against the floor. Part of the truth, perhaps. But Duval, he is a man of layers, like an onion. Peel one away, and another lies beneath. The painting, the letter, the artifact, they are connected, and Clara is the key. That night Poirot retired to his room, but sleep eluded him. He sat at a small desk, sketching a timeline of events in his precise, elegant hand. The gala, the argument, Clara's disappearance, Sir Reginald's death, the forged painting, the letter. The smuggling ring each was a thread in a tapestry of deception, and at its center was Victor Duval, a man whose charm masked a past that Poirot was determined to uncover. As the clock struck midnight, a soft knock came at the door. Poirot opened it to find Elsie, the maid, her face pale in the lamplight. Monsieur Poirot, she whispered, I couldn't sleep. There's something else I remembered. The night of the gala, I saw Monsieur Duval in the gallery, looking at that Venetian painting. He was touching it, like he was checking something. I thought it odd, but I didn't say before. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mercy, mademoiselle. You have done well. Rest now, and fear not. Hercule Poirot is on the case. As Elsie slipped away, Poirot closed the door, his mind alight. The painting was more than a forgery, was a clue, perhaps hiding something within its frame or canvas. And Duval's interest in it confirmed his role, whether as smuggler, thief, or something else entirely. He returned to his desk, picking up his pencil. The heart lies, he murmured, but the canvas speaks truth. The chapter closed with Poirot staring into the darkness, his little gray cells weaving a net that would soon ensnare the guilty. The truth was near, hidden in the brushstrokes of a false masterpiece, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until it was revealed. Chapter 5. The Coded Diary. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Greystone Manor, casting long shadows across the polished oak floor of Clara Winthrop's bedroom. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his mustache twitching ever so slightly as his sharp eyes scanned the space. The air was thick with the scent of lavender from a sachet tucked beneath the pillow, but beneath that fragrance lingered something else, a faint, metallic tints, as if secrets had seeped into the very walls. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful companion, hovered near the doorway, his brow furrowed as he watched Poirot's meticulous movements. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice soft yet commanding. This room, it is a stage. Clara Winthrop has played her part here, but the script, it is hidden. We must find the lines she did not wish to speak aloud. Hastings nodded, though his expression betrayed his confusion. But Poirot, the police have already searched this room. They found nothing but her clothes, her jewelry, nothing out of the ordinary for an heiress. Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile. The ordinary, Hastings, is where the extraordinary hides. The police, they see with their eyes, but Poirot, he sees with the little gray cells. With a flourish, Poirot moved toward the vanity, its surface cluttered with crystal perfume bottles and a silver-backed brush. His fingers danced lightly over the items, pausing at a small, leather-bound book tucked beneath a silk scarf. He lifted it with the care one might afford a rare manuscript, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. A diary, he murmured, turning it over in his hands. The cover was embossed with Clara's initials, C.W. in gold, but the lock was broken, its clasp bent as if pried open in haste. This, Hastings, is no ordinary journal. It is a map to the heart of our mystery. Hastings stepped closer, peering over Poirot's shoulder. A diary. But surely, if it held anything important, Clara would have hidden it better, or taken it with her. Poirot's smile widened. Precisement, mon ami. That she left it behind tells us two things. 1. She wished it to be found, and 2. She trusted its secrets to a code only the worthy could decipher. Clara Winthrop is no fool. She plays a game of shadows. Opening the diary, Poirot revealed pages filled with neat, looping handwriting, but the words made no sense. Strings of letters, numbers, and symbols danced across the pages, a jumble that defied comprehension. Hastings let out a low whistle. Good Lord, Poirot, it's gibberish. Some sort of cipher, perhaps not perhaps. Hastings, certainly. Poirot's eyes sparkled as he traced a finger along a line of text. X7B to Q9RT4 ML8V. This is no child's game. This is the work of a mind that fears discovery yet craves revelation. Clara has hidden her truth in plain sight. Poirot settled into a plush armchair by the window, the diary opened on his lap. Hastings, unable to contain his restlessness, began pacing. But what could she be hiding? Her engagement to that Duval fellow, or something about her uncle's death? Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. Patience, Hastings. The diary will speak, but first, we must learn its language. Fetch me paper and pen from the desk. S'il vous plaît. Hastings complied, and soon Poirot was scribbling furiously, his brow furrowed in concentration. The room fell silent, save for the scratch of pen on paper and the distant ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. Hours passed, the sunlight shifting across the floor, but Poirot remained engrossed, muttering to himself in French as he tested patterns and substitutions. At last, he leaned back, a triumphant gleam in his eye. Voila! The key, it is found. Clara's code is a variation of the Vigenère cipher, but with a twist of numerical overlay to obscure the key word. Most ingenious. Hastings, who had been dozing in a corner, jolted upright. You've cracked it. What does it say? Poirot held up a hand, his expression grave. Not all at once, mon ami. The diary reveals much, but it is a tapestry, and we must unravel it thread by thread. Listen, and I shall share the first of its secrets. He cleared his throat and began to read, translating the decoded text aloud. March 15th. The weight of it grows heavier each day. Uncle speaks of the treasure, as if it were a curse, not a prize. He guards it with his life, but I fear it will claim his soul. I have seen the papers, the ones he hides in the safe, behind the portrait of grandmother. They speak of a statuette, jeweled and ancient, smuggled from a land torn by war. Its value is beyond gold, is a symbol of power. But to whom does it belong? I must know. Hastings' eyes widened. A jeweled statuette, smuggled. Good heavens, Poirot. This sounds like something out of a spy novel. Poirot's expression remained somber. It is no fiction, Hastings. This statuette, it is the heart of our mystery. Clara's disappearance, her uncle's death. The suspicions surrounding Victor Duvalo are threads leading to this treasure. But there is more. He turned the page, reading another entry. April 2nd. I confronted Uncle tonight. He was furious, his face red, as he shouted that I must never speak of it again. But I saw fear in his eyes. He knows I have read the papers. He knows I suspect the truth that the statuette was not his to keep. Lady Beatrice was there, her hands trembling as she poured tea. She said nothing, but her silence screamed guilt. What does she know? I must be careful. The walls of Greystone have ears. Poirot closed the diary, his fingers lingering on the cover. Clara Winthrop was no mere heiress. Hastings was a detective in her own right, piecing together a puzzle that threatened her family's honor and, perhaps, her life. Hastings rubbed his chin, his mind racing. Lady Beatrice, she's been awfully quiet since we arrived. Always hovering about, wringing her hands. Do you think she's involved? Poirot rose, pacing slowly across the room. Involved. But how deeply? We cannot yet say. Her late husband, Lord Percival, was a collector of rare artifacts, and during the war, he traveled often to the continent. It is possible he crossed paths with this statuette, with those who coveted it. The room fell silent as Poirot's words hung in the air. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the window panes, as if the manor itself were protesting the secrets being unearthed. Hastings shivered, glancing toward the door. "What's our next move, Poirot? Do we confront Lady Beatrice?" Poirot shook his head. "Nan, Hastings, to confront is to scatter the pieces of our puzzle. We must observe. Listen. Lady Beatrice will reveal herself, but only if she believes her secret is safe. For now, we return to the drawing room, where the guests gather for luncheon. The diary has given us a lens. Let us see who flinches under its gaze." The drawing room of Greystone Manor was a study in opulence, its walls adorned with portraits and its tables laden with silver and crystal. The guests, a motley assembly of aristocrats, distant cousins, and questionable newcomers, sat in uneasy silence as Poirot and Hastings entered. The air was thick with tension, each glance a silent accusation, each clink of a teacup a potential signal. Lady Beatrice sat near the fireplace, her delicate hands folded in her lap, her face a mask of composure. Yet Poirot's keen eyes noted the slight tremor in her fingers, the way her gaze darted toward the butler, Mr. Grayson, as he poured coffee. Victor Duval, Clara's enigmatic fiancé, lounged in an armchair, his dark eyes scanning the room with a predator's calm. The other guest, Clara's cousin, Margaret, a sharp-tongued spinster, Dr. Langley, the family physician with a penchant for brandy, and Mr. Harrow, a local landowner with a dubious reputation. Each seemed to carry their own burden of secrets. Poirot took a seat near Lady Beatrice, accepting a cup of tisane from Grayson with a polite nod. "Madame," he began, his voice smooth as silk, "you have known the Winthrop family for many years. Nan, you must have been close to Clara, a young woman of such spirit." Lady Beatrice's smile was tight, her eyes flickering with unease. "Oh yes, Mr. Poirot, Clara was like a daughter to me after my dear Percival passed. Such a bright girl, but impulsive. Her engagement to Mr. Duval, for instance, so sudden." Victor's head snapped up, his charm faltering for a moment. "Impulsive, Lady Beatrice. Or perhaps simply a matter of the heart. Clara and I understood each other." Poirot sipped his tisane, his eyes never leaving Lady Beatrice. "The heart, it is a powerful force, Monsieur Duval, but sometimes it is the mind that guides us. Clara, I am told, was a woman of intellect. She kept a diary, perhaps, a place to record her thoughts." The room seemed to hold its breath. Lady Beatrice's cup clattered against its saucer, a sound as loud as a gunshot in the silence. "A diary," she said, her voice strained. "I wouldn't know. Clara was private about such things." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Of course, Madame, but the young, they often leave traces of their thoughts. Nan, a word here, a note there. It is the task of Poirot to find these traces." Grayson, the butler, moved to clear the table, but Poirot's gaze stopped him mid-step. "Monsieur Grayson," he said, his tone casual yet piercing, "you have served the Winthrops for many years. You must have seen much, heard much. Did Mademoiselle Clara ever speak to you of treasures, perhaps something her uncle valued greatly?" Grayson's face remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped a tray. "No, sir. Miss Clara was always kind, but she kept her own counsel. As for Sir Reginald, he was a private man." Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, but his eyes lingered on Grayson's retreating form. Hastings, catching the look, leaned closer. "You suspect the butler, Poirot, or is it Lady Beatrice you're after?" Poirot's voice was a whisper. "Both, Hastings, and neither. The diary has opened a door, but the room beyond is filled with shadows. We must tread carefully." That afternoon, Poirot requested a private audience with Lady Beatrice in the conservatory, a glass-walled haven filled with exotic plants and the hum of bees. She arrived promptly, her lavender gown rustling as she settled onto a wicker chair. Her composure had returned, but Poirot noted the faint lines of strain around her eyes. "Madame," he began, his tone gentle, "you are a woman of refinement, of taste. Your late husband, Lord Percival, was a collector, was he not, of artifacts, perhaps from distant lands?" Lady Beatrice's fingers tightened on her fan. "Percival had many interests, Mr. Poirot. He traveled widely during the war, acquiring pieces for our collection. But that was long ago." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes locking with hers. "And yet, madame, some pieces carry a weight that lingers. A jeweled statuette, for instance, smuggled from a war-torn land. Such a piece might stir memories or fears." The color drained from Lady Beatrice's face, her fan slipping from her grasp. I don't know what you mean," she stammered. "Clara's disappearance, Sir Reginald's death, these are tragedies, not mysteries. Why do you torment me with such questions?" Poirot's voice softened, but his gaze remained unyielding. "Because, madame, the truth is a balm, not a torment. Clara's diary speaks of a treasure, of secrets her uncle guarded. You were there when she confronted him. What did you see? What did you hear?" Lady Beatrice's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "Nothing. I saw nothing. I heard nothing. Please, Mr. Poirot, leave me in peace." She rose abruptly, fleeing the conservatory, her footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Poirot watched her go, his expression unreadable. Hastings, who had been waiting outside, stepped in, his face flushed with excitement. "By Jove, Poirot, you rattled her. She's hiding something, isn't she?" Poirot nodded slowly. "Oui, Hastings. But what she hides, it is not only guilt, it is fear. Fear of what the statuette represents, or of who seeks it." As dusk fell over Greystone Manor, Poirot returned to Clara's bedroom, the diary once more in his hands. He read further, each entry deepening the mystery. April 10th. "I followed Uncle to the village last night. He met a man tall, with a scar across his cheek. They spoke of the statuette, of a buyer waiting across the sea. Uncle seemed desperate, as if he had no choice. I fear he is in too deep. I must protect him, but how? Victor says he can help, but I do not trust him fully. His eyes hold secrets I cannot read." Poirot paused, his fingers tracing the words. "Victor Duval," he murmured. "You are a thread that runs through this tapestry, but are you the needle or the knot?" Another entry caught his eye. April 12th. "Lady Beatrice came to my room tonight, her face pale as death. She begged me to stop asking questions, to let the past lie buried. She spoke of Percival, of debts unpaid, of promises broken. I saw a note in her hand, half hidden in her sleeve. She slipped it to Grayson when she thought I wasn't looking. What are they planning? I must decode the rest of Uncle's papers before it's too late." Poirot's eyes narrowed. He closed the diary and rose, his movements swift and purposeful. "Hastings," he called, striding toward the door. "We must act quickly. The threads, they converge." Hastings scrambled to follow as Poirot descended the grand staircase, his cane tapping a sharp rhythm. In the hall, they found Grayson, polishing silver, his movements deliberate but his eyes wary. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the silence. "A word, if you please. Last night, you received a note from Lady Beatrice. Where is it now?" Grayson's hand froze, the cloth slipping from his fingers. "A note, sir. I don't know what you mean." Poirot's smile was cold. "Do not play the fool, monsieur. The note was seen, its purpose suspected. Hand it over, or I shall summon the police to search your quarters." Grayson's composure cracked, his shoulders sagging. With trembling hands, he reached into his pocket and produced a folded slip of paper. Poirot took it, unfolding it with care. The message was brief, written in Lady Beatrice's elegant hand. "Meet Th at the Oak Grove, midnight. Tell him it is safe." Poirot's eyes gleamed with triumph. "Th," he said softly. "Tom Harrell, perhaps. The local landowner, with a reputation for flexibility. Merci, Monsieur Grayson. You have been most helpful." As Grayson retreated, Hastings whispered, "What now, Poirot? Do we follow this Harrow fellow?" Poirot nodded, his expression resolute. "We, Hastings, the Oak Grove, at midnight. There, we shall find another piece of our puzzle. But we must be cautious. The shadows grow long, and the players in this game are desperate." The Oak Grove stood at the edge of Greystone's grounds, its ancient trees looming like sentinels. In the moonlight, Poirot and Hastings arrived early, concealed behind a gnarled trunk, their breaths misting in the chill night air. Poirot's eyes scanned the darkness, his senses alert to every rustle and snap dot. At precisely midnight, a figure emerged from the shadows. Grayson, his coat collar turned up against the cold. He paced nervously, clutching a small package wrapped in cloth. Moments later, another figure appeared, Tom Harrow, his broad frame unmistakable, a scar glinting faintly on his cheek. "What?" Harrow growled, his voice low. "Did you bring it?" Grayson hesitated, then handed over the package. "It's what she wanted." "But Harrow, this has gone too far. Clara's gone. Sir Reginald's dead." "Quiet," Harrow snapped, snatching the package. He unwrapped it, revealing a small, glinting object, a key, its head engraved with a crest. "This'll do. Tell her ladyship I'll handle the rest." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. Before he could signal Hastings, a twig snapped underfoot, the sound shattering the silence. Harrow spun, his hand reaching for something in his coat. Grayson bolted, vanishing into the trees, while Harrow cursed and followed, his footsteps fading into the night. "Blasted Poirot," Hastings whispered, his face pale. "They heard us." Poirot's expression was calm, almost amused. "Perhaps, Hastings, but they have given us more than they took. A key, mon ami, and a name. The game, it advances." Back at the manor, Poirot sat by the fire in the library, the diary open before him, the note from Lady Beatrice tucked between its pages. Hastings paced, his nerves frayed. "What does it all mean, Poirot? A key, a smuggler, Lady Beatrice's note. How does it fit with Clara's disappearance?" Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. "It fits, Hastings, because it is a chain. Clara discovered her uncle's secret, the statuette smuggled and hidden. She sought to expose it, but in doing so, she stirred a nest of vipers. Lady Beatrice, Grayson, Harrow, perhaps even Victor Duval, they are links in this chain. The key we saw tonight, it unlocks something precious, perhaps a safe, perhaps a truth." He tapped the diary. "Clara's words guide us, but they also warn us. She suspected danger, yet she pressed on. We must do the same. Tomorrow, we search for the safe behind the portrait of Grandmother Winthrop, and we watch Lady Beatrice closely. Her fear, it will lead us to the heart of this mystery." As the fire crackled, Poirot's eyes gleamed with determination. The coded diary had spoken, and its secrets were only the beginning. Chapter 6. The Midnight Intruder. The air in Greystone Manor was thick with secrets, as if the very walls conspired to hold their tongues. Hercule Poirot sat in the dimly lit drawing room, his small, immaculate figure a stark contrast to the sprawling opulence around him. The fire in the hearth had dwindled to embers, casting flickering shadows across the ornate tapestries and heavy oak furniture. His fingers, delicate yet purposeful, traced the edge of a teacup, though he had no intention of drinking from it. His mind was elsewhere, turning over the puzzle of Clara Winthrop's disappearance and the tangled threads of deceit that wove through the household. It was well past midnight, and the manor was cloaked in an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional creak of settling wood or the distant howl of the wind outside. Poirot's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, darted to the grandfather clock in the corner. Its pendulum swung with a rhythm that seemed to mock the urgency of the hour. The events of the past, days Clara's vanishing, Sir Reginald's death, the coded diary, and the whispers of smuggling, had coalesced into a single certainty. Someone in this house was desperate to keep the truth buried. Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by a faint noise, barely audible but unmistakable to his trained ear, a soft thud, like a book falling from a shelf, followed by the lightest scrape of metal. It came from the direction of the library, just beyond the heavy oak doors at the end of the hall. His lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. "Infant," he murmured to himself, "the fox stirs." rising from his chair with the grace of a cat. Poirot adjusted his waistcoat and retrieved his cane, not for support but as a tool of readiness. He moved silently across the room, his polished shoes making no sound on the thick Persian rug. The library, he knew, was where Clara's diary had been hidden. Its coded entries, a tantalizing clue to the treasure she had written of. If someone was there now, they were not browsing for late-night reading. He paused at the drawing-room door, his hand resting lightly on the brass handle. The manor was a labyrinth of corridors and concealed passages, a relic of its Tudor origins, and Poirot had spent the afternoon studying its layout with Captain Hastings. The library, with its floor-to-ceiling shelves and hidden alcoves, was a perfect place for secrets to be kept or sought. The question was, who was seeking them tonight? Poirot eased the door open, stepping into the darkened hallway. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of old leather and wax polish. He moved toward the library, his cane tapping lightly against the floor, a deliberate signal to anyone listening that he was not attempting stealth. If the intruder was bold enough to act under his nose, they would soon learn that Hercule Poirot was not a man to be underestimated. As he approached the library doors, he noticed they were slightly ajar, a sliver of moonlight spilling through the gap. Another sound, a muffled rustle, like papers being shuffled, confirmed his suspicions. He pushed the door open slowly, allowing the hinges to creak, announcing his presence. The library was vast, its shelves towering like sentinels. Under the high, vaulted ceiling, a single window, framed by heavy velvet curtains, let in a pale wash of light, illuminating the chaos within. The room was in disarray. Books lay scattered across the floor, their pages splayed open as if flung in haste. A chair had been overturned, its carved legs jutting awkwardly into the air. The desk, usually meticulous, was a jumble of papers, ink bottles, and quills. Poirot's eyes narrowed as they fell on the secret panel behind the desk, where Clara's diary had been concealed. The panel was ajar, its edges splintered as if pried open with force. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, his voice a mix of exasperation and intrigue. "The intruder. He is not subtle." He stepped forward, his cane clicking against the parquet floor, and scanned the room for signs of the culprit. The moonlight revealed a faint trail of dust disturbed on the floor, leading to the window. He followed it, noting the smudged footprints, small but not delicate, suggesting a man's shoe, perhaps a size 8, with a distinctive worn heel. They matched the prints he had observed in the garden maze, a detail that tightened the knot of suspicion in his mind. At the window, he found the latch undone, the frame slightly askew. The intruder had likely entered or exited here, though the drop to the garden below was steep. Poirot leaned out, his eyes scanning the shadowed lawn. The maze loomed in the distance, its hedges a dark, impenetrable mass under the starry sky. No movement caught his eye, but the night felt alive with possibility. Turning back to the room, Poirot's attention was drawn to a small object glinting on the floor near the desk. He crouched, careful not to disturb the surrounding debris, and retrieved it with a handkerchief. It was a cufflink silver, engraved with the initials V. Victor Duval, Clara's enigmatic fiancé. Poirot's eyebrows arched. "Monsieur Duval, you are either very careless or very bold," he murmured, slipping the cufflink into his pocket. The sound of footsteps in the hallway snapped him from his reverie. They were heavy, hurried, and accompanied by a faint wheeze. "Captain Hastings." Poirot straightened, turning just as the door burst open, and Hastings appeared, his face flushed with alarm. "Poirot," Hastings gasped, clutching the doorframe. "I heard a crash. Thought you might be in trouble. What's happened here?" Poirot raised a hand, his expression calm but commanding. "Mon ami, you arrive at the perfect moment. The library, it has been visited by one who seeks what does not belong to him. Observe the chaos, the footprints, the panel forced open. Our intruder was searching for Mademoiselle Clara's diary." Hastings surveyed the room, his eyes wide. "Good Lord, it's a mess. But why the diary? Do you think they know about the code?" Poirot's lips twitched into a faint smile. "The code, the treasure, the secrets, they are all connected." Hastings, The diary is the key, and someone in this house is desperate to turn it. But they have made a mistake. They have left clues, and Poirot, he does not ignore clues. Hastings frowned, scratching his head. But who? Victor Duval. That maid, Ellen, was acting awfully shifty when I questioned her earlier. Or maybe Lady Beatrice, she's been hovering about like a vulture. Poirot tilted his head, considering. All are possible, mon ami. But we must not leap to conclusions. The little gray cells, they demand order, method. We shall set a trap to catch our fox. A trap. Hastings' eyes lit up, his enthusiasm undimmed by the late hour. What sort? Poirot gestured toward the secret panel. The intruder. He did not find the diary, for I have it safe in my possession. But he does not know this. We shall make it appear that the diary is still here, waiting to be claimed. Tonight, we watch and we wait. Hastings nodded, though his expression betrayed a hint of unease. Right then. I'll fetch my revolver, just in case. Poirot's smile widened. Your revolver, Hastings. It is always eager to join the fray. But tonight, we rely on the mind, not the gun. Come, help me restore order to this room. We must make it inviting for our visitor's return. Together, they set about tidying the library, carefully arranging the books and papers to suggest nothing had been disturbed since the intruder's departure. Poirot replaced the splintered panel, securing it loosely to give the impression it could be opened again. He placed a decoy, a leather-bound book resembling Clara's diary, its pages filled with meaningless scribbles. The trap was simple but effective. The intruder, believing the diary still hidden, would return, and Poirot would be waiting. As they worked, Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the case. The cufflink pointed to Victor Duval, but its presence seemed almost too convenient. Was Victor truly so careless, or was someone planting evidence to shift suspicion? The footprints, too, were troubling. They matched those in the maze, suggesting the intruder was familiar with the estate's grounds. And then there was the butler, Mr. Grayson, whose nervous demeanor during Poirot's earlier questioning had not gone unnoticed. Grayson had admitted to passing a note from Lady Beatrice to an unknown man in the village, a detail that gnawed at Poirot's intuition. Tell me, Hastings, Poirot said, pausing to adjust a book on the shelf. What do you make of our butler, Monsieur Grayson? His hands, they tremble when he speaks of Lady Beatrice. Hastings shrugged, stacking papers on the desk. He's a bit jumpy, I'll grant you, but he's been with the family for years, loyal as they come, or so the staff say. Do you think he's mixed up in this? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Loyalty, it is a fine quality, but it can blind as well as bind. Grayson knows more than he tells. The note he delivered is a thread we must pull. By the time they finished, the library appeared almost untouched, save for the faint marks of disturbance that only a keen eye would notice. Poirot directed Hastings to conceal himself behind a heavy curtain near the window, while he took a position in an alcove, hidden by the shadow of a towering bookcase. The decoy diary lay in its place, a silent lure. The hours crept by, the silence broken only by the ticking of a small mantel clock. Poirot's patience was infinite, his senses attuned to every nuance of the night. At last, just before 3 o'clock, a faint creak echoed from the hallway. The door eased open, and a figure slipped inside, cloaked in darkness. The intruder moved with purpose, their steps light but deliberate, heading straight for the secret panel. Poirot held his breath, his cane gripped tightly. The figure reached the desk, their hands fumbling with the panel. A soft click, and it swung open. The intruder's fingers closed around the decoy diary, and in that moment, Poirot stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Bonsoir, he said, his tone deceptively mild. You have found what you seek, Nest Cep, but I fear it is not what you expected. The figure froze, the diary slipping from their grasp. Moonlight caught their face, and Poirot's eyes widened in recognition. Not Victor Duval, as he had half expected, but Ellen, the maid, her face pale with fear. Monsieur Poirot, she gasped, her voice trembling. I didn't mean no harm. I was just what? Mademoiselle Poirot's voice was sharp now, his eyes boring into hers. Searching for a diary that does not belong to you. Or perhaps covering the tracks of another. Ellen's hands twisted together, her eyes darting toward the window. I was told to find it, she whispered. He said it was important, that it'd save her. Who said this? Poirot pressed, stepping closer. Speak, mademoiselle, or the consequences, they will be severe. Before Ellen could answer, a shout from Hastings broke the tension. Poirot, someone's at the window. Poirot spun around, just in time to see a shadow dart past the glass. Hastings lunged from his hiding place, throwing open the window and clambering out into the night. Poirot turned back to Ellen, who had seized the moment to bolt for the door. With surprising agility, he blocked her path, his cane raised like a barrier. Not so fast, mademoiselle, he said, his voice calm but unyielding. You will tell Poirot everything, or you will answer to the police. Ellen's shoulders slumped, her defiance crumbling. It was Grayson, she whispered the butler. He told me to get the diary tonight, said it was for Miss Clarice. Sake I didn't know what to do. I owe him. You see, he helped my family when we were in trouble. Poirot's expression softened, but only slightly. And the man at the window, who was he? I don't know, Ellen said, tears welling in her eyes. Grayson said there'd be someone watching to make sure I did it right. I swear, I didn't mean to cause trouble. Before Poirot could press further, Hastings returned, breathless and empty-handed. Lost him in the maze, he panted. Blighter was fastly dark to see his face. Poirot nodded, his mind already racing. Ahead. Very well, Hastings. Take Mademoiselle Ellen to her room and ensure she stays there. We will speak again in the morning. For now, we have a new piece of the puzzle. As Hastings escorted the trembling maid from the room, Poirot returned to the desk, retrieving the decoy diary. He opened it, flipping through the blank pages, his mind turning over Ellen's words. Grayson, the loyal butler, was entangled in this web, and the mysterious figure at the window suggested a larger conspiracy. The footprints, the cufflink, the note to the village hall, were threads leading to the heart of the mystery. Poirot closed the diary and slipped it into his pocket, his eyes gleaming with determination. The night, it has been most instructive, he murmured. Tomorrow, we follow the trail to the village. The fox, he runs, but Poirot, he is close behind. He stepped into the hallway, the darkness swallowing his small figure, but his resolve burned brighter than ever. The game was afoot, and Hercule Poirot would not rest until every secret of Greystone Manor was laid bare. Chapter 7. The Village Connection. The morning mist clung to the cobblestones of Ashwick Village, curling around the steepled roofs and ancient yews like a reluctant guest unwilling to depart. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the damp chill, stepped from Greystone Manor's chauffeured car, his polished shoes clicking against the uneven stones. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, followed, his brow furrowed with the weight of their latest discoveries. The library break-in at the manor had left Poirot's little gray cells humming, and the footprints, those maddeningly familiar footprints, linked to the garden maze, had set them on a new trail. The village, Poirot sensed, held the key to Clara Winthrop's vanishing, and perhaps to the darker secrets lurking beneath Greystone's opulent facade. Mon ami, Poirot said, adjusting his hat against the breeze. This village, it is like a puzzle box, simple on the surface, but within, there are compartments hidden, waiting for the right touch to spring open. Hastings nodded, though his eyes scanned the quiet street with unease. I say, Poirot, it's awfully peaceful for a place, hiding smugglers and secrets. Where do we even start? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sure sign of amusement. We start, Hastings, with the people. They are the pieces that move, and in their movements, we find the truth. Come, we go to the inn. The Blackthorn Inn stood at the heart of Ashwick, its timber bird Fockaday, sagging under the weight of centuries. Its sign, a gnarled thorn tree painted in fading black, creaked in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of ale and woodsmen, and a handful of locals hunched over their pints, casting wary glances at the newcomers. Poirot, undeterred by the guarded atmosphere, approached the bar, where a wiry woman with sharp eyes and a mop of auburn hair was polishing glasses with practiced efficiency. "Good morning, Madame," Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet. "I am Hercule Poirot, and this is my associate, Captain Hastings. We seek information about a certain occurrence at Greystone Manor." The woman, who introduced herself as Nell Carter, raised an eyebrow but didn't pause her polishing. "Greystone, folk up there don't much mix with us villagers. What's this occurrence, then, the heiress going missing?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "You are well informed, Madame Carter. It is Mademoiselle Clara Winthrop we seek, and perhaps you have heard of a note passed from the manor to someone here in Ashwood." Nell's hand stilled, and for a fleeting moment, her gaze darted to a man in the corner, a burly figure with a weathered cap pulled low over his eyes. "Notes. I hear plenty of gossip, but I don't deal in it. You'd best ask around." She resumed her polishing, her movements brisker now. Hastings leaned closer, his voice low. "Poirot, that fellow in the corner," she looked at him. "Think. He's our man." "Patience, Hastings," Poirot murmured. "The eyes, they betray. But we must not leap. We observe, we inquire, we deduce." They took a table near the hearth, ordering tea to blend into the scene. Poirot's sharp gaze roamed the room, cataloging details: the barmaid's nervous fidgeting, the locals' hushed conversations, the faint scent of pipe tobacco clinging to the man in the cap. After a moment, Poirot rose and approached the man, who was nursing a pint, with the air of someone expecting trouble. "Bonjour, Monsieur Poirot," said, his tone disarming. "May I have a word? I am Hercule Poirot, and I seek a gentleman who may have received a message from Greystone Manor." The man's eyes narrowed, his fingers tightening around his glass. "Name's Tom Harrow. I don't know nothing about no messages." "You a copper?" No, Poirot said, raising a hand. "I am a detective. But a private one. My interest is in the truth, not in accusations. A note, perhaps, from a lady at the manor. A small thing, but it could lead us to Mademoiselle Clara." Tom Harrow's jaw worked, as if chewing on his thoughts. Finally, he leaned back, his voice gruff. "All right, suppose I did get a note, slipped to me by that butler, Grayson. Said it was from Lady Beatrice, but I didn't ask questions. I was just to hold on to a package for someone. Didn't see no harm in it." Poirot's eyes sparkled. "A package, you say? And where is this package now, Monsieur Harrow?" Harrow shifted uncomfortably. "Hidden safe. I ain't saying more till I know what's what." "You think I had something to do with that girl disappearing?" "Not at all," Poirot said smoothly. "But you may help us find her. Tell me, this package, did it come from Mademoiselle Clara herself?" Harrow. Silence was answer enough. Poirot pressed gently. "And did you, perhaps, see Mademoiselle Clara in the village, near the old mill, Patar?" The question struck a nerve. Harrow's face paled, and he glanced toward the door. "I don't know nothing about the mill. You're fishing, mister." But Poirot's smile was unrelenting. "The little gray cells, they do not fish. They hunt, and they have found a trail. Come, Monsieur Harrow, let us be frank. You know more than you say." Harrow stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I've said enough. You want answers? Go poke around the mill yourself." He strode out, leaving his pint half-finished. Hastings watched him go, his expression dubious. "Bit of a rough sort, isn't he? Do you think he's our smuggler?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, rising. "But he is a thread, and we shall pull it to the mill." "Hastings, the barmaid," she mentioned. "It too, did she not? There is a connection, and we shall find it." The old mill stood on the edge of Ashwick, its weathered stones cloaked in ivy, its great wheel creaking as it turned in the sluggish current of the river. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of moss and decay. Poirot's keen eyes swept the scene, noting the churned mud near the entrance, the faint glint of something caught on the wheel. He approached cautiously, his cane tapping the ground as if testing its secrets. "Look, Hastings," he said, pointing to the wheel. A scrap of fabric, pale blue and delicate, fluttered in the current, snagged on a rusty spoke. Poirot retrieved it with care, holding it up to the light. Silk, mon ami, the same shade as Mademoiselle Clara's gown from the gala. Hastings' eyes widened. Good Lord, Poirot. You think she was here? But why? Hiding or taken? Poirot's expression was unreadable. The mill, it is a place of secrets. Let us see what else it hides. Inside the mill was a labyrinth of shadows and dust, its ancient machinery groaning under the weight of disuse. Poirot moved with purpose, his eyes darting to the corners, the crevices, the places where secrets might linger. Near a pile of sacks, he paused, crouching to examine the floor. A faint smear of mud, fresh and distinct, matched the footprints from the maze and the library. Someone has been here, Hastings, he said. And not long ago. The same boots, the same tread. Or intruder, perhaps. As they searched, a faint clatter echoed from above. Hastings drew his revolver, but Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm. No need for that, mon ami. We are hunters, not warriors. Let us see who stirs. They climbed a rickety staircase to the upper loft, where the air was thick with the scent of old grain. In the dim light, a figure crouched near a trapdoor, hastily shoving papers into a satchel. It was Nell Carter, the barmaid, her face flushed with panic. Madame Carter, Poirot said, his tone mild but firm. You are far from your inn. What brings you to this place of shadows? Nell froze, her hands trembling. I was just checking on things. Old Mill's been in my family. I heard you were poking around. Thought I'd see what's what. Poirot's smile was knowing. And the papers, madame, they are part of this family business. Nell's shoulders slumped. All right, you've caught me. I saw Clara. That night, she vanished. She came to the inn, frantic. Said she needed to hide something. Gave me a key. Told me to keep it safe. I didn't ask questions. She was scared. And I owed her a favor from years back. A key. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And where is this key now? Nell hesitated, then reached into her pocket, producing a small brass key, its surface etched with a faint floral pattern. She said it was for the mill. Something about a hiding place. I didn't want no part of it, but she begged me. Poirot took the key, turning it over in his gloved hands. You have done well to tell me, Madame Carter. But tell me, did Mademoiselle Clara mention a man? Perhaps Monsieur Duval, or another? Nell shook her head. She didn't say names. Just that someone was after her. Someone she trusted once. She was heading to the mill. Said it was the only place safe. Hastings, unable to contain himself, burst out. But why the mill? What's here that's so important? Poirot's gaze was distant, his mind racing. That, Hastings, is what we shall discover. Madame Carter, you will return to your inn. Say nothing of this to anyone, not even Monsieur Hercule. The truth, it is close, but it is delicate, like a spider's web. Nell nodded, her face pale, and hurried down the stairs. Poirot turned to the trapdoor, inserting the key into a rusted lock. With a groan, the trapdoor opened, revealing a narrow compartment below. Inside was a small wooden box, its lid carved with the same floral pattern as the key. Poirot lifted it carefully, his fingers tracing the edges. Careful, Poirot, Hastings warned. Could be a trap. Non, Hastings, Poirot said, his voice steady. This is no trap. This is a treasure. He opened the box, revealing a bundle of letters, yellowed with age, and a single photograph of a young woman, Clara, unmistakable, standing beside a man whose face was obscured by shadow. The letters were written in a hurried hand, detailing shipments, dates, and cryptic references to a jeweled heart. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he read, his mind piecing together the fragments. The statuette, he murmured. It is here, in this mill, or it was. Clara, she hid it, but why? To protect it, or to protect herself? Hastings peered over his shoulder. Smuggling, Poirot. You think she was mixed up in it? Nan, mon ami, Poirot said, closing the box. I think she was trying to stop it. These letters, they are not hers. They belong to another, perhaps, Sir Reginald. Perhaps another player in this game. We must return to the mill at dawn. when the light is clearer. For now, we take this box, and we guard it well." As they stepped into the fading light, the mill wheel creaked ominously, its rhythm a reminder of time slipping away. Poirot clutched the box, his mind alight with possibilities. The village had yielded its secrets, but not all. Tom Harrow, Nell Carter, the mysterious package, there were pieces of a puzzle, and Clara Winthrop was the center. As they returned to the car, Poirot's thoughts turned to the old mill, its shadows hiding the truth he was determined to uncover. "I vow, Hastings," he said, his voice resolute, "we shall search the mill at dawn. The answer, it waits for us there, in the heart of Ashwick's secrets." The car rolled back toward Greystone Manor, the mist curling tighter around them, as if the village itself were reluctant to let them go. Chapter 8. The Mill's Secret. The dawn broke over the village of Greystone with a hesitant light, as if the sun itself were wary of what secrets lay hidden in the mist. Hercule Poirot, clad in his immaculate overcoat, despite the early hours, chill, stood at the edge of the village, his sharp eyes fixed on the silhouette of the old mill. Its weathered stone walls loomed against the horizon, the wooden wheel creaking lazily as it turned in the sluggish current of the river. The air carried the damp scent of moss and the faint tang of rust, but to Poirot it was the scent of a mystery nearing its crux. He adjusted his hat, his gloved fingers brushing the brim with precision, and murmured to himself, "The mill, it is no mere structure, it is a vault, the keeper of truths that Clara Winthrop wished to conceal." His companion, Captain Hastings, trudged beside him, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Hastings had been roused from bed with little ceremony, and his usual good humor was tempered by the early hour. "Poirot, are you certain about this?" Hastings asked, his voice low as they approached the mill. "It's just an old heap of stones and timber. What could Clara possibly have hidden here?" Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Mon ami, you see stones and timber, but I see the threads of a tapestry. The scrap of Clara's dress, caught on the wheel says una invitation. She wishes us to find something, or someone wishes us to believe she was here. Either way, the mill holds the key." They reached the mill's entrance, a heavy oak door, warped by years of neglect. The lock was rusted, but intact, and Poirot produced a small tool from his pocketa. Curious implement that looked more like a jeweler's instrument than a lockpick. With a few deft movements, the lock yielded, and the door groaned open, revealing a dim interior thick with the smell of damp wood and grain dust. Inside, the mill was a labyrinth of shadows. The floor was littered with broken crates and sacks, their contents long since spilled or stolen. The great millstone sat silent in the center, its surface worn smooth by decades of grinding. Above, a rickety staircase led to a loft, and a narrow passage disappeared into the gloom where the wheel's mechanism churned. Poirot's eyes darted about, cataloging every detail. The cobwebs undisturbed in the corners, the faint scuff marks on the floor, the glint of something metallic beneath, a pile of burlap sacks. "Hastings, Poirot," said his voice crisp, "search the loft. I shall examine the mechanism. Be methodical, mon ami. The smallest clue may be the most significant." Hastings nodded, though his expression betrayed skepticism, and he climbed the creaking stairs. Poirot moved toward the wheel's housing, where the river's force drove the gears. The machinery was a tangle of iron and wood, slick with moisture. He crouched, his knees protesting, and peered into the shadows. There, wedged between two beams, was a small, tarnished box, its surface etched with intricate designs. Poirot's gloved fingers pried it free, and he opened it to reveal a jeweled statuette, delicate figure of a woman, no taller than his hand, encrusted with emeralds and sapphires that caught the faint light with a mesmerizing glow. "Monsieur," Poirot breathed, turning the statuette in his hands. "The treasure of Clara's diary. This is no mere trinket. It is a relic, a piece of history smuggled through the chaos of war. And someone is willing to kill for it." A sudden clatter from the loft broke his reverie. "Poirot," Hastings called, his voice urgent, "you'd better come up here." Poirot tucked the statuette into his coat and ascended the stairs with surprising agility. In the loft, Hastings stood over a pile of straw, pointing to a trapdoor partially concealed beneath it. The trapdoor was ajar, revealing a narrow ladder descending into darkness. "A hidden compartment," Hastings said, his eyes wide. "I nearly missed it. Do you think Clara's down there?" Poirot's gaze was steely. "If she is, we must be cautious. The mill is a place of secrets, and secrets attract danger. Follow me, Hastings, but keep your wits about you." They descended the ladder into a cramped chamber beneath the loft. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of earth and mildew. A single oil lamp flickered on a wooden table, casting long shadows across the stone walls. On the table lay a scattering of papers, maps, receipts, and a ledger marked with cryptic symbols. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he scanned them, his mind racing to connect the dots. "These are records of transactions," he murmured, flipping through the ledger. "Shipments of art, antiquities. And this statuette, no doubt, Sir Reginald, was no mere collector. He was entangled in a smuggling ring. And Clara, she stumbled upon it." Before Hastings could respond, a shadow moved in the corner of the chamber. Poirot spun, his cane raised like a fencer's blade, just as a figure lunged from the darkness. It was Tom Harrow, the village smuggler, his face twisted with desperation. In his hand gleamed a knife, its blade catching the lamplight. "Stay back, Poirot," Harrow snarled, his voice hoarse. "You've no business here." "That's mine." Poirot's.com was unshaken. "Monsieur Harrow, you are mistaken. The statuette belongs to no one here. It is a relic of a nation's heritage, and you, I think, are but a pawn in a larger game. Tell me, who paid you to hide it?" Harrow hesitated, his grip on the knife faltering. "Clara," he admitted, his eyes darting to the ladder. "She came to me weeks ago, said she needed it, kept safe, said her uncle was mixed up with bad people, and she didn't trust anyone at the manor. And Victor Duval," Poirot pressed, stepping closer, his voice low and commanding. "Did he know of this hiding place?" Harrow's jaw tightened. He knew. He was sniffing around, asking questions. "I told him nothing, but he's not one to give up. He's dangerous." Poirot. A creak from above made them all freeze. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoed on the loft floor. Harrow's eyes widened in panic. "Someone's coming," he whispered, backing toward the wall. "I'm not dying for this." Poirot seized the moment, grabbing the ledger and gesturing to Hastings. "Quickly, mon ami, to the ladder. We must not be trapped here." They scrambled up, emerging into the loft just as a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. It was the butler from Greystone Manor, his usually impeccable demeanor replaced by a cold, calculating stare. In his hand was a revolver, its barrel glinting ominously. "Monsieur Poirot," the butler said, his voice smooth but laced with menace. "You are meddlesome, aren't you? Hand over the statuette, and perhaps you'll leave this mill alive." Poirot's mustache twitched, but his expression remained serene. "Monsieur, you mistake me for a man who bargains with thieves. The statuette is safe, and you, I think, have overplayed your hand." Hastings, now. Hastings, ever loyal, lunged forward, knocking the revolver from the butler's hand. A brief struggle ensued, with Poirot deftly stepping aside to avoid a stray blow. Harrow, seizing his chance, bolted for the stairs, disappearing into the mill's lower level. The butler, overpowered by Hastings' athleticism, slumped to the floor, his face a mask of defeat. Poirot retrieved the revolver and handed it to Hastings. "Guard him, mon ami. We have much to discuss with this gentleman." As Hastings secured the butler, Poirot's attention returned to the statuette, now safely in his possession. He examined it closely, noting the craftsmanship, the weight of history in its jeweled form. "This," he said softly, "is why Clara vanished. She sought to protect it, to expose those who would exploit it. But the question remains, where is she now?" The butler, panting, glared up at Poirot. "You'll get nothing from me," he spat. "Clara's gone, and you'll never find her." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "We shall see, monsieur. The little gray cells, they are already at work." The mill fell silent, save for the creak of the wheel and the distant rush of the river. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. Clara's diary, the smuggled statuette, Sir Reginald's death, and now the butler's betrayal. He knew Clara was alive, hiding somewhere, her courage driving her to outwit her enemies. But danger was closing in, and time was short. As they prepared to leave the mill, Poirot paused at the door, his hand resting on the frame. A scrap of paper, caught in a crack, fluttered in the breeze. He plucked it free and unfolded it, revealing a single line in a hurried script. "Meet me at the chapel." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Clara," he murmured, "you are a clever one. The game, it continues." He turned to Hastings, his eyes alight with determination. "Come, mon ami. The chapel awaits, and with it, perhaps, the truth." The journey to the village chapel was swift, the morning mist parting as if to clear their path. Poirot's mind was a whirlwind of deduction, each clue slotting into place like the pieces of a mosaic. The statuette, now wrapped in his handkerchief, felt heavy in his pocket, not with physical weight, but with the burden of its secrets. Clara's disappearance, Sir Reginald's death, the smuggling ring-all were threads in a tapestry woven with greed and deception. And yet Poirot sensed a deeper motive, a personal betrayal that lay at the heart of it all. The chapel loomed ahead, its spire piercing the fog. Hastings, still clutching the butler's revolver, glanced at Poirot. "What if it's a trap?" he asked, his voice tinged with unease. "Then we shall spring it, Hastings," Poirot replied, his tone resolute. "But we shall do so on our terms. The little gray cells, they do not fail." As they stepped into the chapel's shadow, the air grew still, and Poirot's hand tightened on his cane. The note, the statuette, the butler's treachery pointed to a confrontation that would bring Clara's fate into focus. The mill had yielded its secret, but the chapel, Poirot knew, would reveal the heart of the mystery. Chapter 9. The Chapel Confession. The village of Greystone lay cloaked in the hush of twilight, its cobblestone streets glistening under the faint glow of gas lamps. Hercule Poirot, his silver-headed cane tapping rhythmically against the stones, made his way toward the ancient chapel at the edge of the village. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and fading roses, and a thin mist curled around the hedgerows, lending an ethereal quality to the scene. The note he had received at the mill scrawled in a hurried hand, demanding a meeting at the chapel, burned in his pocket like a coal. "Meet me at the chapel," it had read, unsigned but unmistakably urgent. Poirot's little gray cells hummed with anticipation, for he sensed this rendezvous would peel back another layer of the mystery surrounding Clara Winthrop's disappearance. The chapel, a squat stone structure with ivy crawling up its weathered walls, stood isolated from the village's heart. Its stained-glass windows, depicting somber saints, glowed faintly from within, suggesting a single candle or lantern lit inside. Poirot paused at the iron gate, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. The graveyard flanking the chapel was silent, its tombstones leaning like weary sentinels. A rustle in the nearby yew trees made him grip his cane tighter, but it was only a night bird taking flight. With a deliberate breath, he pushed open the gate, its hinges groaning in protest, and stepped onto the flagstone path. Inside, the chapel was cool and dim, the air thick with the musty scent of old hymnals and wax. A single candle flickered on the altar, casting long shadows that danced across the pews. Poirot's polished shoes clicked against the stone floor as he advanced, his senses alert. He had not informed Captain Hastings of this meeting, preferring to face the unknown alone. Hastings, dear though he was, had a tendency to blunder into delicate situations, and Poirot suspected this encounter required finesse. A soft shuffle from the shadows near the altar drew his attention. "Monsieur Poirot," a voice whispered, trembling yet familiar. It was a woman's voice, low and cautious, as if afraid of being overheard. "Oui, c'est moi," Poirot replied, his tone calm but commanding. "Step into the light, s'il vous plaît. I do not converse with phantoms." A figure emerged from behind a pillar, her silhouette resolving into the form of Emily Grayson, Clara Winthrop's childhood friend. Her auburn hair was pinned haphazardly, and her green eyes, usually bright with mischief, were wide with fear. She wore a simple gray coat, its hem damp from the evening mist, and her hands clutched a small reticule as if it were a lifeline. "Emily Grayson," Poirot said, inclining his head. "You are the author of the note, I presume?" She nodded, glancing toward the chapel door. "I had to be sure you'd come alone. It's not safe, Monsieur Poirot. Not for me, and not for you." Poirot's mustache twitched as he studied her. "Mademoiselle, you have summoned Hercule Poirot to this place of sanctity at an hour most inconvenient. I trust you have a reason worthy of such drama." Emily swallowed, her fingers tightening on her reticule. "It's about Clara. She's alive, Monsieur Poirot. I've seen her." Poirot's eyes narrowed, though his expression remained composed. "Alive, you say? This is a claim most bold, mademoiselle. Clara Winthrop has vanished, and the world believes her lost, perhaps forever. Where is she, and why this secrecy?" Emily hesitated, her gaze darting to the stained-glass window above, where a saint gazed down with mournful eyes. "She's hiding," she had to. "Clara found out something terrible, something about her uncle, Sir Reginald, and his business dealings. She was afraid for her life." Poirot leaned forward, his cane planted firmly before him. "And what, precisely, did Mademoiselle Clara discover that warranted such a disappearance?" Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "Smuggling. Sir Reginald was involved in something illegal, moving artifacts, priceless ones, from the war. Clara found proof in his study, papers and letters. She told me she couldn't trust anyone, not even Victor Duval." "Victor Duval," Poirot repeated, his tone laced with disdain. The charming art dealer had already proven himself a man of dubious morals, with his forged paintings and evasive answers. "And what role does Monsieur Duval play in this affair?" "He knew about it," Emily said, her voice shaking. "Clara said he was pressuring her to hand over something, a statuette, I think. She wouldn't tell me everything, but she was terrified. She said if anything happened to her, I should find you." Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. The jeweled statuette he had found at the mill, hidden in a secret compartment, was clearly the linchpin of this mystery. Clara's diary had hinted at a treasure her uncle guarded, and Tom Harrow, the village smuggler, had confirmed Clara's involvement in hiding it. Now, Emily's confession suggested Clara had staged her disappearance, not out of fear alone, but as a calculated move to expose a criminal network. "And where is Mademoiselle Clara now?" Poirot asked, his voice gentle but insistent. "If she is alive, as you claim, why does she not come forward?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "She's in hiding, somewhere safe. I helped her, Monsieur Poirot. We planned it together after the gala. She slipped away into the maze, left the glove and the champagne glass to make it look like she'd been taken. She wanted to draw out the people who were after her, Victor, maybe others. She's been moving from place to place, staying out of sight." Poirot nodded slowly, his mind cataloging every detail. The torn lace glove, the spilled champagne, the muddy footprints in the mazel were part of a deliberate ruse. Clara Winthrop was no victim. She was a strategist, playing a dangerous game. "And you, mademoiselle, have risked much to tell me this." "Why now?" "Because they're closing in," Emily said, her voice breaking. "Someone saw her near the mill 2 nights ago. I think they know she's alive, and they're hunting her. I couldn't keep silent anymore. You're the only one who can help her." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind remained razor-sharp. "You have done well to confide in Hercule Poirot. But tell me, where is Clara now? I must speak with her myself." Emily opened her mouth to reply, but the sharp crack of a gunshot shattered the silence. The stained-glass window above exploded, shards of colored glass raining down like jagged confetti. Poirot dove behind a pew, pulling Emily with him as another shot rang out, splintering the wood above their heads. The candle on the altar flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows. "Mon Dieu," Poirot muttered, his heart pounding, but his mind clear. "Stay down, mademoiselle," Emily whimpered, clutching his arm. "They've found us." Poirot's eyes scanned the chapel, searching for the source of the shots. The door was still closed, and the windows were too high for an easy escape. The shooter must be outside, likely positioned in the graveyard. He cursed himself for not anticipating an ambush, though he had suspected the note might be a trap. His hand tightened on his cane, which concealed a slender blade of precaution he rarely needed but was grateful for now. "Listen carefully," he whispered to Emily. "We must move to the vestry. There is a side door. We will exit there." She nodded, her face pale. Poirot helped her crawl along the pews, keeping low as they made their way toward the small door behind the altar. The chapel was eerily silent now, the only sound their shallow breaths and the distant drip of wax from the candle. Poirot's mind churned. Who had fired the shots? Victor Duval, whose cigarette case he had glimpsed in the shadows. Lady Beatrice, with her nervous glances and secretive notes. Or another player, yet to be revealed. They reached the vestry, a cramped room cluttered with hymnals and dusty robes. Poirot eased the side door open, peering into the graveyard. The mist had thickened, obscuring the tombstones, but he saw no movement. He gestured for Emily to stay behind him as they slipped outside, the damp grass muffling their steps. The night air was cold, and Poirot's breath formed small clouds as he scanned the darkness. A glint of metal caught his eye near a Utria cigarette case, its surface engraved with the initials V.D. Victor Duval. Poirot bent to retrieve it, his gloved fingers brushing the damp earth. The case was heavy, its silver surface tarnished but unmistakable. He slipped it into his pocket, his mind racing. Duval had been here, or someone wished him to believe so. "Emily," he said, turning to her, "you must tell me where Clara is. Now, the danger is greater than you know." She hesitated, then whispered, "She's at the old boathouse, near the coast. It's hidden in the reeds, a mile from the village. She's been there since yesterday." Poirot nodded, his expression grim. "You will return to the village, mademoiselle, and speak to no one. Find Captain Hastings at the inn and tell him to meet me at the boathouse. Discretion, you understand." Emily nodded, her eyes wide. "Be careful, Monsieur Poirot. They'll kill her if they find her." Poirot's mustache twitched. "They shall not find her before Hercule Poirot does. Now, go." As Emily slipped into the mist, Poirot turned toward the coast, his cane tapping a determined rhythm. The boathouse was a lead worth pursuing, but the cigarette case in his pocket weighed heavily on his mind. Victor Duval was either a careless fool or a cunning manipulator, and Poirot intended to discover which. The night was far from over, and the little gray cells were only beginning to unravel the truth. The path to the boathouse wound through a marshy stretch of land, where the air grew brackish and the ground soft underfoot. Poirot moved cautiously, his eyes darting to every shadow. The mist was both ally and enemy, concealing him but also hiding any pursuers. He recalled the map he had sketched of the maze, its twists mirroring the labyrinth of lies he now navigated. Clara Winthrop, it seemed, was not merely a victim but a key player in this drama, her disappearance a gambit to expose a smuggling ring. Yet the gunshot in the chapel suggested her enemies were closing in, and Poirot's time was running short. As he neared the coast, the faint sound of waves lapping against the shore reached his ears. The boathouse emerged from the mist, a dilapidated structure half hidden by reeds. Its wooden walls were weathered, and a single lantern glowed faintly. Inside, casting a warm light through a cracked window, Poirot approached, his senses heightened. If Clara was here, she was either a mastermind or a prisoner or both. He knocked softly, using the head of his cane. "Mademoiselle Clara." "It is Hercule Poirot. You are safe now." A long silence followed, broken only by the creak of the boathouse door. A figure appeared, shrouded in a cloak, her face pale but resolute. It was Clara Winthrop, her dark hair tangled and her eyes burning with determination. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady despite her disheveled appearance. "I knew you'd come." Poirot bowed slightly, his eyes never leaving her face. "Mademoiselle, you have led me on a chase most intricate, but the time for games is over. Tell me everything." Clara stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. The boathouse was sparse, with a cot in one corner and a small table littered with papers. A map of the coast lay open, marked with cryptic symbols. Clara sank onto the cot, her hands clasped tightly. "It started with my uncle," she began. "I found letters in his study, hidden in a false drawer. They detailed shipments of artifacts, stolen during the war, smuggled through Greystone Manor. He was working with Victor Duval and others, including Lady Beatrice. I confronted him, and he threatened me." Poirot nodded, his mind fitting her words into the puzzle. "And the statuette, the jeweled treasure mentioned in your diary." Clara's eyes widened. "You found it." "I hid it at the mill to keep it safe. It's not just valuable. It's a symbol, stolen from a nation ravaged by war. I wanted to return it, but they'd kill me to keep it. And so you vanished," Poirot said, his tone approving. "A plan most clever, mademoiselle. But why not come to Poirot at once?" "I didn't know who to trust," Clara admitted. "Emily helped me stage it, but even she doesn't know everything. I've been moving, watching, trying to gather proof, but they're getting closer. Victor knows I'm alive." Poirot hand straight to the cigarette case in his pocket. And he is not alone. The shot in the chapel was meant to silence you, or perhaps me. Tell me, mademoiselle, who else is involved?" Clara hesitated, then pointed to the map. "There's a warehouse on the coast, near the cliffs. That's where they store the artifacts before shipping them. Victor's meeting someone there tomorrow night. I was going to follow him, but now, you will leave this to Hercule Poirot," he said firmly. "You have done well, but the danger is too great. Return to the village with me, and I shall ensure your safety." Clara shook her head. "I can't. Not until they're stopped. I owe it to my uncle, to myself." Poirot studied her, seeing the fire in her eyes. She was no damsel in distress, but a woman driven by justice. He nodded slowly. "Very well. But you will follow my instructions. We shall go to the warehouse together. But first, I must summon Captain Hastings." As they planned their next move, the mist outside thickened, cloaking the boathouse in secrecy. Poirot's mind buzzed with questions. Who had fired the shots in the chapel? Was Victor Duval the mastermind, or merely a pawn? And what role did the butler's mysterious note to Lady Beatrice play? The answers lay ahead, in the shadows of the warehouse, where the truth would finally emerge. The chapter closed with Poirot and Clara stepping into the night. The lantern extinguished behind them. The game was afoot, and Hercule Poirot was ready to play his masterstroke. Chapter 10. The smugglers. Trail. The fog clung to the cobblestones of the coastal village like a conspirator, muffling the clatter of hooves and the distant crash of waves against the cliffs. Hercule Poirot, bundled in his immaculate overcoat, stood beneath a flickering gas lamp, his sharp eyes scanning the narrow street. Beside him, Captain Hastings shivered, his breath visible in the damp air. The night was heavy with secrets, and Poirot's little gray cells were alight with anticipation. "Mon ami," Poirot murmured, adjusting his hat. "The trail of Victor Duval leads us here, to this forgotten corner of the coast. A man like him does not linger in such a place without purpose. We must be vigilant." Hastings nodded, though his expression betrayed unease. "I say, Poirot, this village gives me the creeps. All these shuttered windows and not a soul about. Are you sure Duval's here?" Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Certain, none. But the telegram I intercepted at Greystone Manor, it was no accident. Meet at the old warehouse, midnight. Bring the goods." It is too precise to be coincidence. Victor Duval, he is no mere lover of Clara Winthrop. He plays a deeper game. The telegram, crumpled but carefully preserved in Poirot's pocket, had been a stroke of fortune. Found in the butler's quarters, it bore no signature, only a coded phrase that Poirot's meticulous mind had unraveled. The goods could only refer to the jeweled statuette Clara had hidden, the treasure at the heart of this tangled affair. And the warehouse, a derelict structure on the village's edge, was their destination. The two men moved silently through the mist, Poirot's cane tapping a steady rhythm against the stones. Hastings, ever the loyal companion, kept a hand near his revolver. Though Poirot had warned him that subtlety, not force, would win this night, the warehouse loomed ahead, its weathered timbers sagging under the weight of years. A faint light flickered through a cracked window, and Poirot held up a gloved hand, signaling a pause. "Listen," he whispered. Voices. Hastings strained his ears. From within came the low murmur of conversation, punctuated by the creak of floorboards. Poirot's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "The little gray cells, they do not deceive. Come, Hastings, but with care. We are not alone." They crept to the side of the warehouse, where a rusted door hung ajar. Poirot eased it open, wincing at the faint squeak. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of salt and decay. Crates were stacked haphazardly, their contents spilling straw and shadows across the floor. In the center of the room, illuminated by a single lantern, stood Victor Duval. His tailored coat was slightly askew, and his handsome face was taut with tension. Opposite him was a figure cloaked in darkness, their voice low and urgent. "You promised delivery by tonight," the shadowed figure hissed. "The buyers are impatient. Where is the statuette?" Duval's voice was smooth, but Poirot detected a tremor beneath the charm. "Patience, my friend. The girl was trouble, but I've handled it. The statuette is secure, and we'll have it by dawn." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The girl, Clara. His mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the case. Clara's disappearance, the coded diary, Sir Reginald's death, all threads leading to this moment. Duval was no mere smuggler. He was a linchpin in a larger scheme, one that Sir Reginald had likely orchestrated before his demise. Hastings leaned close, whispering, "Shall we confront them now?" Poirot shook his head. "Nan, Hastings, to rush is to ruin. We listen, we learn. The truth, it reveals itself to those who wait." The conversation in the warehouse grew heated. The shadowed figure stepped into the lantern's glow, revealing a weathered face marked by a scar across one cheek. Poirot recognized him instantly. Smithson, a notorious smuggler whose name had surfaced in his inquiries about Sir Reginald's wartime dealings. The man's presence confirmed Poirot's suspicions. Greystone Manor's wealth was not merely inherited, but built on illicit trade. "Where's the girl?" Jameson demanded, his voice sharp. "If she talks, we're finished." Duval's smile was cold. "Clara's no threat. She's indisposed. Focus on the statuette. It's worth more than her life." Poirot's grip tightened on his cane. Clara was alive, then, but in danger. The urgency of her plight pressed against his methodical nature, urging action. Yet he remained still, cataloging every word, every gesture. Duval's casual cruelty was a mask, Poirot sensed, hiding fear or desperation. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked beneath Hastings' foot. The sound, though faint, cut through the warehouse like a gunshot. Duval and Jameson froze, their heads snapping, toward the shadows. Poirot cursed silently, pulling Hastings behind a crate. "Who's there?" Jameson barked, drawing a pistol. Poirot's mind raced. Exposure now would jeopardize everything. He whispered to Hastings, "Stay low, mon ami, follow my lead." With a theatrical flourish, Poirot stepped into the light, his demeanor calm but commanding. "Messieurs, pardon the intrusion. Hercule Poirot, at your service. I could not help but overhear your most fascinating discussion." Duval's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly, his smile returning. "Monsieur Poirot, an unexpected pleasure. What brings you to this humble place?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "The pursuit of truth, Monsieur Duval. It is a habit of mine. And you, I think, have much to share about Mademoiselle Clara and a certain jeweled statuette." Jameson's grip on his pistol tightened, but Poirot raised a hand, his voice steady. "Lower your weapon, monsieur. Violence is so untidy, and it solves nothing. Let us speak as civilized men." The smuggler hesitated, then relented, though his eyes remained wary. Poirot continued, his tone deceptively light. "You speak of a statuette, oui, a treasure hidden by Mademoiselle Clara. But I wonder why such urgency. And where is the lady herself?" Duval laughed, a hollow sound. "You're fishing, Poirot. Clara ran off, nothing more. As for the statuette, it's a family heirloom. I'm merely reclaiming it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Reclaiming, or stealing. The little gray cells, they tell me you are not so innocent. In this warehouse, it is no place for heirlooms. It smells of smuggling, of secrets. Jameson growled, but Duval silenced him with a gesture. You're clever, Poirot, but you're meddling in things you don't understand. Leave now, and no harm will come to you. Poirot's smile was serene. Harm, Nan, I prefer to stay, and I think, Monsieur Duval, you will tell me more. For instance, the ledger I found in Sir Reginald's study it lists transactions, payments to men like our friend here. Sir Reginald was no mere gentleman, was he? The mention of the ledger struck a nerve. Duval's composure faltered, and Jameson took a step forward, only to be halted by a sharp glance from his partner. Poirot pressed his advantage. The statuette, it is no heirloom. It is a relic, smuggled during the war, its value beyond price. Sir Reginald guarded it, but Clarucci discovered the truth. And now she is a threat to your enterprise. The warehouse grew silent, the air thick with tension. Then, from the shadows, came a new sound, a faint clatter, like glass breaking. Poirot's head snapped toward it, his instincts screaming. Hastings, he hissed. But before he could act, a figure darted from behind a crate, cloaked and hooded, sprinting for the door. Jameson cursed and fired, the shot echoing wildly. Poirot dove behind a crate, pulling Hastings with him. The figure vanished into the night, and Duval shouted, "After them!" Chaos erupted. Jameson bolted after the intruder, while Duval hesitated, torn between pursuit and confronting Poirot. The detective seized the moment, rising with a flourish. "Monsieur Duval, you are distracted. A pity, for I have more questions." Duval's eyes darted to the door, then back to Poirot. "You're a fool, Poirot. This isn't your game." "On the contrary," Poirot replied, his voice cutting like a blade. "It is precisely my game, and I play to win." Hastings, panting, whispered, "Who was that?" "Clara." Poirot shook his head. "Nan, not Clara, but someone who knows more than they should. We must find them, and quickly." Leaving Duval to his indecision, Poirot and Hastings slipped out the warehouse's side door, the fog swallowing their steps. The village was a labyrinth of alleys and shadows, but Poirot's mind was a map, tracing the intruder's likely path. They moved toward the harbor, where the scent of salt grew stronger and the sound of waves drowned out their footsteps at the harbor's edge. They found the intruder's trailer-dropped handkerchief, embroidered with the initial B. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Lady Beatrice," he murmured. "So, she is not merely a bystander. Her note to the butler, her nervousness, she is entangled in this web." Hastings frowned. "Lady Beatrice, but she's a guest at the manor, practically royalty. Why would she be here?" Poirot's smile was grim. "Royalty, mon ami, is no shield against greed. The statuette's value tempts even the noblest hearts. Come, we must find her before Jameson does." They followed the trail to a derelict boathouse, its roof sagging under the weight of neglect. Inside, Lady Beatrice stood trembling, her elegant gown mud-stained, her face pale in the moonlight. She clutched a small parcel, her eyes wide with fear. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped. "I didn't mean, I only wanted to protect Clara." Poirot's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. "Madame, the time for secrets is over. What is in that parcel, and where is Mademoiselle Clara?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, then unwrapped the parcel, revealing a bundle of letters. "These prove Sir Reginald's dealings with the smugglers. Clara found them and gave them to me, for safekeeping. She's alive, Poirot, but she's hiding. She knew they'd kill her if she stayed." Poirot's eyes scanned the letters, his mind racing. "And you came here tonight to deliver these to Duval?" "No," Lady Beatrice cried, "to warn him. I thought if I could convince him to stop, Clara would be safe. But I was wrong, he's dangerous." Before Poirot could respond, a shadow loomed in the doorway. Jameson, pistol in hand, stepped inside. "You talk too much, my lady," he snarled, Hastings drew his revolver, but Poirot raised a hand. Enough, messieurs. This night has seen too much violence. Monsieur Jameson, you will lower your weapon, or I shall ensure the authorities know every detail of your operation. Jameson laughed, a harsh sound. You're alone, Poirot. Number one's coming to save you. But Poirot's smile was unshakable. Alone, Nan. The little gray cells, they are never alone, and they have already sent word to the village constable. It was a bluff, but Jameson hesitated, his eyes flickering with doubt. In that moment, Hastings lunged, tackling the smuggler to the ground. The pistol skittered across the floor, and Poirot swiftly retrieved it, his calm unshaken. Madame, he said to Lady Beatrice, you will come with us. And you, Monsieur Jameson, will answer for your crimes. As they secured Jameson and escorted Lady Beatrice back to the village, Poirot's mind turned to Clara. She was alive, hiding, but where? The letters confirmed Sir Reginald's role in the smuggling ring, with Victor as his intermediary. But the statuette remained elusive, and Clara's safety hung in the balance. At the village inn, Poirot spread the letters on a table, his fingers tracing the faded ink. One caught his Aja-coded telegram, similar to the one he'd intercepted. It spoke of a rendezvous at sea, set for the following night. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Hastings, we have one more move to make. The sea, it calls us. And there, I think, we shall find Mademoiselle Clara. The chapter closed with Poirot folding the telegram, his mind already charting the stormy waters ahead. The smugglers' trail had led them this far, but the final truth lay beyond the horizon, where secrets and treasures waited in the dark.